Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
All right, I'm not hearing.
Oh, I hear it now.
You hear it now? Okay, because okay, now I hear it. Okay, we will call to order this meeting of the Middleton Plan Commission for July 9th. Abby, would you please do the roll call?
Adams,
Here.
Bruce,
Here.
Harp,
Here.
Paulson,
Here.
Summers. Here. And Chair Hanairo is present. Commissioner Sonnentag is absent and excused.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our first item of business, it's the approval of the minutes of our June 11th Plan Commission meeting. Does anyone have any changes or corrections to make? Seeing none, the minutes as drafted for the June 11, 2024 Plan Commission meeting are accepted. Moving on to our first regular agenda item, we have the specific implementation plan amendment for courtyard improvements at Middleton Glen, 6720 Century Avenue and 3111 Pheasant Branch Road. Staff, would you like to brief us on this?
Sure, very briefly. This pertains to the addition of 4,600 square feet of impervious surface area in the southeast quadrant of the property. The applicants are here. I know that Ms. Cruiser is here as well, representing Middleton Glen. The only addition I would have to my staff report is that our stormwater engineer has indicated that the stormwater management plan was submitted and is under review. They have returned relatively minor comments to the developers team, and there's nothing that's out of the ordinary there.
Okay. Okay, would anybody like to make a motion?
Mark, could you just put up your staff report or your recommendations, please? I couldn't remember if there's any contingencies that we need to.
Yeah,
address.
so I recommended, you'll see them there under the recommendation.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll move to determine that the site plan changes meet the criteria for approval and are reasonably consistent with the general development plan, and to approve the SIP amendment contingent on engineering staff approval of the stormwater management plan with the light fixtures complying with Chapter 33 outdoor lighting ordinance and resolution of engineering staff comments.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Who would like to second?
Summers will second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor of approving the motion to recommend, approving of the motion that we determine that the site plan changes meet the criteria for approval and are reasonably consistent with the general development plan, and 2, approve the SIP amendment contingent on engineering staff approval of the stormwater management plan, the light fixtures complying with Chapter 33 outdoor lighting ordinance, and resolution of engineering staff comments, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Moving on, we have 2 items coming up involving T-wall developments. So what I'm going to suggest is that we flip them without any objections. We'll do item 3 first, because I think that will be the lengthier discussion. Yes? Okay. So we're going to go to that one first. But before we do, there's something I'd like to say. And I want to make it clear, this is coming from me, has nothing to do with the rest of my commissioners or the staff. Mr. Wall, you're here somewhere. Okay. We appreciate all the work that you do and that your company has done for the city of Middleton. You've provided much needed housing for our residents, and we're very pleased with the vibrant commercial life that you've brought through Middleton Center to our downtown. Lake 61, which I pass by every time I go to the gym. It's a beautiful building. It adds density to an area that's well served by transit, and it's also within walking distance to shops, restaurants, and services like a vet, a pharmacy, and a dental office. And Middleton has made it clear that we really want to see the Garden District succeed as a development. We're excited about the possibilities that will come from this development. We are disappointed that the Conservancy Bend residences likely won't live up to the promise of attainable owner-occupied housing. That is, after all, one of the things that tipped the scales in your favor when the city was considering bids for that particular development project. We're disappointed, but we'll soon be discussing and may decide to grant the replacement of planned townhouses with apartments. And if we do approve one of the proposed options, it's because we know Middleton needs housing. It's because this is a great location for more density, being so close to the school, the Conservancy, the downtown, our major transit line. And it's because we can be flexible and we can reach a compromise when needed. I would like to see you, Mr. Walls, show that same kind of flexibility and willingness to compromise. You can't win them all. You can win some, you can't win them all. There are times when the city will not budge on past decisions, and we will hold you to commitments that you and your partners voluntarily entered into. As you've observed, it's the responsibility of this Plan Commission and the Common Council to make final decisions on matters like modifying a general development plan or approving a preliminary plat. And in making these decisions, we look to the staff for guidance, for background information, and for recommendations. The staff in all our departments have the training and the expertise to conduct detailed reviews of all development plans. They understand the city processes that we follow to make decisions. They understand the plans like the comp plan and the strategic plan, and they know the actions that council endorsed when they approved those plans. They also have a good understanding of what's allowed and what isn't under state law and city ordinances. I know my colleagues on council and on this commission greatly appreciate the staff's attention to detail, and we value the guidance they provide to help us carry out our responsibilities. I can't abide anyone showing disrespect for staff who are just doing their jobs. And it's flat out unacceptable for anyone to bully or threaten or demean staff when they're just doing their jobs. So I will ask that starting today, when you communicate with the city staff, either in person or in writing of any kind, please do so with respect and with restraint. I'm asking you to communicate in a professional manner, striving for brevity, having a clear ask, and avoiding inserting any emotion or speculation or accusation or threats. I hope you'll find the ability to do that. I guarantee it will improve outcomes if you do. It will waste far less time, and it will make life easier for all of us, including you. Thank you. And now I will turn the preliminary plat, the Garden District discussion over to Abby. I think you're going to give the briefing.
Yes, I will.
Thank you.
I'm just going to share a screen here so that I can try to pull up my slides. All right. So as Chair Hanairo mentioned, and our staff concurs with, we continue to be very supportive of this Spruce Company redevelopment project that we've been working on really heavily since 2021. So it's been about 3 years of work on the development team side and the city staff side, as well as the various committees and commissions and boards that have provided substantial input on this development project. And I think at this point, our primary staff request is to really get clarity on these outstanding policy issues from the Plan Commission and the council. We thought that we had a really solid framework for that in 2021, but the applicant had some different takeaways, which has led to a lot of pressure on our staff to change past actions by city committees, commissions, and the Common Council, which we obviously don't have the authority to do. And those delays are resulting in a lot of staff resources and staff time being devoted to reviewing and re-reviewing this project. And so what we're really hoping for is direction and clarity tonight and hopefully from the Common Council next week. So I just wanted to start by going over a brief history of this development project. The rezoning application for a rezoning from the old B3 zoning to Plan Development District General Implementation Plan first went before the Common Council on 7/20 of 2021, so about 3 years ago exactly. And I've highlighted in yellow some of the points that I want to show because they're directly related to the policy issues that are before you tonight. So at that time, the recommendation that was coming out of the Plan Commission included items such as preparation and approval of a plat, which would need to include land dedication along the Pheasant Branch Conservancy Creek corridor in order for the city to provide basic maintenance of Pheasant Branch Creek. We also needed a temporary limited easement, which was granted to the city so that we could do creek restoration work. And then there was a recommendation for a referral to Park, Recreation, and Forestry Commission and to the Conservancy Lands Committee. At that meeting, there was a motion to defer the rezoning and instead refer the proposal to PRFC and the Conservancy Lands Commission. That was unanimously passed. Oops, let me go back. Okay, so 8 days later, it went to CLC. And there was a motion made to agree with the overall concept as presented with the addition stating that any private property stormwater features be excluded from the proposed parklands. That also was approved unanimously. It went to Parks Board in August of 2021. There were concerns expressed about stormwater being shown in the park. And Terrence Wall stated at that time that the private development will be able to manage stormwater outside of the parkland. And then there was a motion by Schaefer, seconded by Shaw, to support the concept and that the commission supports preservation of the creek corridor and providing as much park space in this area as possible. There are videos of these meetings. These are the official minutes from the meetings where this was discussed. And then the rezoning application went back to the city council on 8/3 of 2021. And the motion was amended to request that the developer provide additional information on what exactly was being proposed for dedicated parkland. So the rezoning was not acted on during that meeting. And then on August 17th of 2021, the city council went into closed session to discuss the Bruce Company and T-Wall rezoning request. And then later, under old business in open session, there was a recommendation to defer action on the rezoning and ask that the developer make the following changes to the GIP. They wanted them to remove the shared parking lot that was being proposed, to move a building, and to dedicate a minimum of 3 acres of parkland. And then they agreed to waive the first reading of the rezoning ordinance, which typically would require 2 readings if these requested changes could be satisfied. And so then at the next meeting on September 7th of 2021, there was a recommendation to suspend the rules and to approve the rezoning application contingent on preparation and approval of a plat, which would need to include land dedication along the creek corridor for the city to provide basic maintenance. Any stormwater features should be on private property, not public, and support for preservation of the creek corridor and providing as much park space in this area as possible. The document, the depiction that went along with that recommendation is displayed on the screen here. And you can see that the land that's outlined showing public park on the south, that's the city-owned parcel, the latitude graphic site. And you can see the remaining area roughly that was being proposed for public parkland. I amended the packet for the meeting tonight because we received a letter from T-Wall Enterprises, and they asked that it be shared with the Plan Commission. That letter was also shared with the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission, and it is included in the packet. And I felt like there were some points that were made in the letter that I should provide a response to. And so the first thing that I want to note is multiple times within that letter, it was referred to as Abby's recommendation. I am Abby. I want to clarify that I do not deserve credit for the recommendation that was included in the memo. Those were recommendations that were made by the Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission at their meeting on June 17th. And you can look at the minutes from that meeting. Those were included in the packet. But the reason that this item went to the Parks Board is because it was referred from the Plan Commission at their February 27th meeting. So you can see displayed on the screen at the bottom, that is the Parks Board's recommendation. You can see that they recommended to the Plan Commission and the Common Council that only active parkland be counted towards the 3-acre parkland dedication requirements. The remaining deficit from the negotiated 3-acre parkland dedication requirement be made up by paying fees in lieu of land dedication, that we would not accept the request to swap lands to allow the city to retain the ownership of Parmenter Street frontage, and to not accept the request to have a shared parking lot on the city parcel, which would remove usable and functional parkland. I was not in attendance at that Parks Board meeting, but Nick Adams, who is the chair of Parks Board, is here. David Shaw, who is the vice chair of Parks Board, is also here. And Kylie Scherer, our Parks and Recreation Director, is here. So if there are any questions about the recommendations, those people would be better to weigh in. T-Wall did have at least one representative at the meeting, Jake Buns, and the Bruce Company also had representatives at the meeting that can speak to that recommendation. The second thing that I wanted to clarify is parkland dedication requirements. Within the letter, there is a statement that says that the 3-acre dedication requirement is arbitrary. So I wanted to go over how the city calculates parkland dedication for development projects. So in Chapter 19, which is the city's subdivision ordinance, 19.06K3, it states, the subdivider shall dedicate sufficient land area and/or fees to provide adequate park, playground, recreation, and open space to meet the needs to be created by and to be provided for the subdivision, minor subdivision, or planned development district. At least 1,450 square feet of land shall be dedicated for each proposed residential dwelling unit within the subdivision, minor subdivision, or planned development district. If you look at the number of residential dwelling units that are approved under the zoning for this project, it's 800 units, and that would result in land dedication of 26.6 acres. We recognize that this is a redevelopment project, and the city's standards don't have a different requirement for a greenfield subdivision on the edge of town versus a redevelopment project within the core of the city. And so this was deliberated and debated heavily by the city council in 2021. And rather than requiring what the ordinance would require, which is almost 27 acres, they substantially reduced the requirement and recommended dedicating a minimum of 3 acres of parkland. And just to show how this compares to another recent project that, again, is very dissimilar in that it is a greenfield development, Red Tail Ridge subdivision, but it's similar in that it has a similar number of units. So the dedication requirement under our ordinance for the Bruce Company project would be just under 27 acres. The dedication requirement for Red Tail Ridge is just under 30 acres. And what the city negotiated for Bruce Company was 3 acres with no discussion of what the fees in lieu of land dedication requirement would be. For Red Tail Ridge, the city accepted just under 8 acres of dedicated parkland, and they are paying a fee in lieu of land dedication in the amount of about $861,000. And that is based on the difference between the dedication requirement and the approved land dedication multiplied by the fair market value calculation, which is done by the city assessor. And I included in the packet details about how the assessor calculated that for the Bruce Company project. Chapter 19.03, Section 3, Case 6 further states any land to be dedicated as a requirement of this section shall be reasonably adaptable for intended park and recreation uses and shall be at a location convenient to the people to be served. Factors used in evaluating the adequacy of a proposed park and recreation area shall include, but not be limited to, size, shape, topography, geography, tree cover, access, and location. The section goes on to say the determination of land suitability will be at the sole discretion of the Plan Commission acting on the recommendation of the Park, Rec, and Forestry Commission. In this case, our Plan Commission is at a little bit of a disadvantage in that they were not present when the council initially negotiated this minimum park dedication requirement. And so what I am going to be recommending is that the council would play a role in making this determination since they initially had set forth the 3-acre minimum requirement. And then there are several comments made within the letter pertaining to stormwater management. And I just wanted to note that the city is not required to allow private stormwater management within a dedicated park area. And also the private stormwater management area does limit the city's ability to use the parkland because we cannot build on top of that area. So, you know, one of the things that was included in the letter was that T-Wall may propose to pave that 0.25 acres and have a private parking lot on it. But the city is not required to approve a preliminary plat that would include a cutout or a donut hole of private property within a public park. So the recommendation that came from Parks, Recreation, and Forestry Commission is displayed on your screen. I wanted to note that staff is not recommending approval of the preliminary plat this evening. We are recommending that the policy issues be resolved prior to the preliminary plat review. So what we had stated in the memo is displayed on the screen. The only change that I would like to add is what is shown in yellow, which is that we would request for the council to clarify their intent with a 3-acre minimum and whether it was intended to be 3 acres of active parkland. And the benefit of sending it to the council is that our city attorney, Matt Fleming, would be present for that discussion and would be able to answer any questions and provide guidance to the council. So that is all I had.
Okay. All right, members. So we have, oh, I'm sorry, Abby, could you put that recommendation back up?
Yes.
So that we'll have, well, we should be able to see your presentation anyway, in case people have questions. I think we should take each of these policy issues separately and to see where the commissioners stand on it. So to clarify, what we're doing is reviewing the PRFC recommendation to us and deciding what recommendation we want to pass on to the Common Council at next week's meeting, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So starting with number 4, not accept the request to have a shared parking lot on the city parcel. And this remove means we want the developer to remove that parking lot from the city-owned parcel to be used for future parkland.
That's correct.
Okay. So how do members feel about that? Is anyone ready to make a motion on that?
Chair, can we see a map of where that shared parking lot is vis-a-vis the site plan?
Yes.
Thank you.
Would you be okay just looking at the preliminary plat?
Yes.
Okay.
Just want to make sure that everyone's clear which area we're talking about.
So I believe it is
Yes.
this
that's it.
area here.
Right. And I just want to clarify, because I was on commission when we did the GIP a couple of years ago. The original intent of a parking lot closer to Parmenter Street is so that people could access the parkland. Is that consistent with others, with your recollection, Abby?
I think the initial proposal in the original GIP was that there would be a mixed-use L-shaped building on what is showing up on the screen there as Lot 9. So that includes in part property that is owned or controlled by the developer, and that it includes also in part land that is owned by the city. And they were proposing that there would be some sort of mixed-use building that would have a ground floor component that might complement the parkland, and that rectangular shaped box that Daphne had just outlined would be a parking lot that could be shared parking between the mixed-use project and the future public park.
And is the L-shaped building on Lot 9 no longer proposed, or does the preliminary plat only cover some of the lots?
The way that the council approved the GIP is that they required that L-shaped building no longer be an L-shaped building, so that it would entirely remain on property that the developer controls. And I can show that here. Let me see.
Yeah.
And Abby, while you're pulling that up, maybe Mark or Daphne can tell me, what is the linear feet of that beneath the L-shaped building, the part that would remain city parcel to the right along Parmenter?
Here?
Yeah, so just from that, that edge right there along Parmenter, how long is that?
It's not labeled on there, and I don't think that's
Because-
measurable. We could
Probably
estimate
about
it.
65 or 70 feet, I would guess.
Okay.
Just-
If someone's speaking, they need to speak to the microphone. I can't.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just asking about dimension of something.
This right here.
I think
Um,
that's,
L-shaped building in the parking lot.
Yeah, I have that too. That was the originally proposed GIP.
Yeah, can Jake go to the microphone?
Jake, can you go to the microphone? He's almost there. He's almost there, Kurt.
Hi, Kurt.
Hey, Jake.
Yeah, so
Abby, you've got that one too.
I can pull it up from. our site.
Abby will bring that up, Jake.
I was gonna be a pain in the shot. Yeah, so the original proposed parking lot was proposed by us, but it was something that way back in 2021, we had discussions with Matt Admonson, the Parks Director at the time. And he just expressed his intent that if this is going to be a park, community park, the city will want parking for people to come enjoy the park. And obviously we would need parking for our commercial users, our commercial customers at that location. So that's why that parking lot was proposed as a shared parking lot for both the city and our use as well.
Because the first floor was going to be a commercial use.
Yeah, and it's still proposed as a commercial use on the first floor.
At the staff.
So that's just the background of it.
Go ahead. Did you have a
Just,
question?
but that's not how the plan was approved, right? Correct? It was approved with a straight building with the city retaining ownership of all that property?
That's correct, yeah.
That's south of the building?
This is not the exact same drawing that Jake has printed, but it's very close. And this was part of the original proposal. But the way that it was approved was, bear with me.
Without anything on it. And to give even more background, after the original approval was made, we came back to the Parks Committee at the time, proposed this land swap idea in which we got nothing but favorable comments from the Parks Committee to do this land swap. And that's why it's been on our plan ever since then. And that's why we're requesting the land swap today.
And can you show the land swap area on this approved GIP? Approximately.
Want me to take
I
a picture?
think I have that one.
So.
I guess where I'm going is I'm trying to figure out if the land swap and the parking lot are two separate issues or two sides of the same issue. Oh, there we go. So the land swap is to the west, no, to the east.
0.32 acres of city land would be swapped with this 0.32 acres of developer land. So 1 for 1. So we get an L-shaped building here, and then the city would get this land to add to the park going that way.
And again, what was Parks Recreation Forestry's position on the land swap?
At the last meeting to not accept the land swap because it would take away a lot of frontage from Parmenter Street. And if this is, this park is in a great location and we wanted to think of it as more of a community park as opposed to an amenity for the development, strictly for the development. And if you hide it kind of from Parmenter, it limits a little bit of access to the park from Parmenter, from the bike path and the creek corridor to the east. Limits exposure from Parmenter Street. And it really kind of like nestles it into this neighborhood as opposed to being open and accessible for the greater community.
Mhm. I think a great example of that is on Allen Boulevard, the Lakeview East Park. You can't see it. And I mean, it is a neighborhood park, but the improvements that will be made to it should include eliminating the berm and the obstructions to keep people going down Allen from realizing there's a park back there.
Well, and just to make one more point about the land swap, if you look really carefully about what is being displayed on the screen, and then I will quickly share my screen. You can see that the land that they were proposing to swap was already land that they were counting in their parkland dedication to the city. So do you follow what I'm saying? Like, I'm kind of outlining the area where they were showing this as parkland dedication in the GIP that got approved, but then they came back and they were proposing to trade this land for city land. But under their original proposal, this land would have already been dedicated as park.
And Abby, this GIP does not envision a parking lot for the public park other than the angled parking on the public street?
The Parks Commission does not usually like to create a plan for what will be included as an amenity within a public park until they're pretty close to being ready to construct it, not only for purposes of, paying to draw up plans and then having to make revisions, but also because they have found that when they go to the community and ask for what amenities the community would like to see, people get really excited about it and they want them to be built right away, where the city's resources are limited and we may not be able to afford to purchase, equipment and develop out the park right away. So typically what we would do is we would wait until we're pretty close to ready to actually construct something before we would decide what would go where within the park. And that would be done through a public engagement process. And we have tenants within the Latitude Graphics building until at least 2028. So there's likely going to be at least 4 more years before we're able to, you know, vacate that building and tear it down and create the public park.
Can I ask a question of Jake? If the parking lot is not approved, which is our policy item number 4, how does that affect right now the parking lot is proposed on land you own or land that the city owns?
Crosses over, it would cross over the property line, but mostly land city owns.
Okay. If you can't build that parking lot, does that affect your parking ratio on the multifamily building that will be adjacent to it and the commercial uses?
Yeah, it does. Definitely affects the parking ratio for the multifamily. I think the bigger, or, you know, they're equally big, but in my mind, the bigger impact would be just parking for the commercial users. You know, we had envisioned, and I have a board in front of me here that shows a design the city had put together for this area and for the park. We envisioned, you know, a brew pub or a restaurant in that commercial space on the first floor, looking out over the park and then Pleasant Branch Creek. And, you know, it's tough to get customers in the door if they have to walk. You know, I think inherently people are lazy. So if there's not a parking spot really close to these retail, commercial, restaurant uses, people will forego going there because they have to walk more than, you know, 100 feet or something.
So that angled parking on the public street
They could,
is not efficient?
use that. Yes. I mean, that's just public parking. I think at the end of the day, from our perspective is, you know, we see a need for, or I would assume the city sees a need for parking, people to park to use the park. We have a need for parking for people that are living in our building. They would use underground parking as well, but also people that are visiting the restaurant or commercial uses in our building. And with this development, we would be offering to pave a parking lot for the city. So, you know, in our mind, it seems like a win-win on both sides and a pretty good deal for the city.
You're paving a parking lot for the city on land that the city owns.
Yeah. For a use that the city needs though, too, right? Like, you know, the city, people are going to need parking for to use the park. So
Jake, why did the original plan for this building, the linear one without the L, what was wrong with that one?
I believe and Abby, you may have to remind me as well, but we proposed the L and we'd also proposed just showing, like, you know, pretty pictures of the park. We were emulating this plan that the city put together on the GDP. And the council at the time told us to remove everything that was on city-owned property. So that's why we just wiped the slate clean with the intent of coming back with this land swap, excuse me, later, which we're doing now. And like I mentioned earlier, we did get a lot of positive feedback and a concept review with PRFC on the land swap, and the you know, this city drawn park plan kind of all led us towards going for this land swap and this park design. So that's kind of the background of how we got here.
Mr. Bruce?
Nick, can I ask, did Parks, Recreation, Forestry look at previous recommendations and discussions when they took action?
I am really trying to rack my brain about, or kind of go back, you know, recall the meeting where this got brought up to us like 3 or 4 years ago. I'm really struggling to recall that, and, you know, looking through minutes of all the meetings, nothing really kind of like peaked, and maybe I wasn't present at that meeting, I'm not sure, but we really didn't look at the approved plat or the approved GDP at the meeting that we had a couple of weeks ago. So the main focus was the land swap and the long discussion about the frontage on Parmenter Street, I think. And then, you know, we also had a long discussion about the parking. I mean, that was just a long discussion, long agenda item at that meeting to begin with. And, you know, I think our take on some of that, and I'll kind of start with the parking, is that, you know, I wrote down, you know, the total number of acreage when you include everything for the park, would have been 4.84 acres. Okay, that's including the creek bank, any of the city-owned stuff, the land that was dedicated, it would be dedicated. And the parking lot was going to reduce that by 0.4 acres. And so that's all of a sudden you'd have a 4.84 acre park down to just under 4.5, right? So we're starting to see some reductions in the size of the park that we were going to get. And I think that's where a lot of our discussion recommendation ended up coming from is, we did talk about maximizing the amount of park space in that area, and this parking lot would take away from that maximized park space. We don't know what that park's going to look like, as Abby alluded to. We're not going to design a park now for something that may not happen for another 5 years. So, I think that, I'm going to just advocate, I think my role in this and how I went about it is just advocating. We have limited amount of space that we can build new parks in our city. And looking at how much, we are able to get out of this, any reduction to me is a lost opportunity to have more green space in our community. And, part of the shared parking lot would reduce that green space. And, down the road, whether or not a future park has a parking lot is yet to be determined. But that's, and we'll have to determine that as a city, right? And I was looking through our comprehensive outdoor recreation plan, and one of the recommendations actually for this neighborhood was to build a park that's about the size of a neighborhood park. And I looked at the average size of our neighborhood parks. There's a couple outliers, but most of our neighborhood parks are within 5 to 6 acres. And this is smaller than that. Even if this commission and common council accept every inch of land that's being dedicated, this is still not going to exceed 5 acres. So it's still going to be on the small end for a neighborhood park. And, we're thinking about doing more of a community focus on this, and this would be the smallest community park in our system too. So if we need to, I'm hoping I'm speaking accurately for the PRFC. We need to squeeze as much green space out of this area as possible.
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying regular community parks are 5 to 6 acres, so this would be 4.84 or whatever we're proposing. I would be curious to see the other parks, how big the development was that land was dedicated in. Because at the end of the day, if this is a 5 acre park, this is only an 18 acre development site, 17 acre development site. So it's a third of the land of the development site. In addition to that, I feel like, we talked about, is this a community park? Is this just an amenity for the development? Without a parking lot in the park, this really could possibly become just an amenity for the development, because people from, the community, they're just going to have the public street to park on. They want to load more parking spaces to park and enjoy it.
To counter that,
Just my 2 cents.
To counter that though, you're talking about this being a shared parking lot for a business too. What if that business is booming? Let's hope if a business goes there, let's hope that happens, right?
Yeah.
I want to go take my kids to this park. I can't find a parking spot because there's something really, that business is very full. All of a sudden, the shared amenity parking lot is not a shared amenity at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people can park across the street next door and go visit, Hubbard Avenue Diner or wherever, public, but the fact that to me, almost the parking lot seems to be more serving the business and not the park as much. Like, that's how I'm viewing this right now. And yes, it would serve the park and sometimes, but on other times it won't. And, and I know we could, like I said, we could say that about a lot of our city-owned parking lots, right?
Yeah.
This amenity we're providing our community is places for people to park. And if I'm visiting Stonehorse Green or, if I'm going to any of the developments like Longtail or something like that, sometimes I can't find a place to park.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean I'm not going there. Right. So you know, if people can't find a place to park for the business that's gonna go there, it doesn't mean people aren't gonna go there. If it's an attractive place, people are still gonna go there,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, on the flip side, though,
But-
people are still gonna go there, they're parking in the public street, and then there's even less parking for, you know, so.
Well, and don't
I understand your
forget
point,
that the park itself will be developed at some point and may include
And it might,
a city parking lot.
right.
So, which would be for people visiting the park, not the business. So,
If I could interject you, Mr. Adams, Stormwater.
I'm sorry,
Screen is
could
about
you-
sorry, Taylor Brengel, T-Wall
Thanks, Taylor.
Enterprises, General Counsel. Stormwater Screen is 520 parking stalls within 5 blocks. Okay, this site does not. And so to Jake's point, you're saying you want it to be accessible by the public, and that's why you're not putting anything on Parmenter. Mind you, a street that you can't park off of. So you're gonna have to access it off of the public street in the development. But moreover, we can't just look at this as a one-off park. This is connected to Pheasant Branch Conservancy. And so the goal and the vision of this development was to create a corridor and a magnet so that people can access the rest of the trail. So I think it's kind of small-minded to think of this park as just a 5-acre, 4-acre park, because it's so much more, it's trails. And, you know, I was just saying to Terrence in the back, you know, I would love to park at Pheasant Branch. And I remember back before Stage Horse and the other one on Branch Street were developed, people used to park in the parking lot, if you remember, at the corner of Century Avenue and Branch Street. Now there's no parking for that. So, you know, another example of a great public park system without any parking. So I think I understand where Abby's coming from 100%, that we can't pick a parking lot before we design the park. But at the same point, you know, we have these other parks within the community where there's no park access for these wonderful amenities. So I think it's just kind of.
I just feel
Commissioner
the
Summers?
need to insert, since my building is directly across the street and there are, don't quote me on it, but I believe 10 dedicated parking spots in Parmenter Center for trail access that remain open all the time. So there are definitely
And-
accessibility to the trail system right across the street with dedicated parking spots.
yeah. And I don't want to get into, I appreciate the comments, all the comments. I don't want to get into, well, this park has this and the city's not doing X for that. The bottom line is the city will have a park in this neighborhood. And at that time, when the park amenities are decided on, it will include parking. It will have to. So that problem is going to go away. There will be access to the trails. I'm not even going to go there because I just said I don't want to get into specifics. But back to the point about this, I've actually lost track, and I appreciate the staff for getting us back to it. I've lost track on what was actually approved. I know what we're being asked to approve, but can someone show us on the screen what was approved?
I'll note that Commissioner Paulson has his hand raised.
Oh,
too.
thank you. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Oh, thanks. I was just gonna ask a follow-up question, but I think we should hear the answer to your question first.
I'm displaying what was approved on the screen here. This was the GIP.
So my question relates to that, which is, I guess, for Jake or Taylor or Terrence, if you want. What percent of the proposed parking lot that we're talking about is on city property, and what percent is on your property? And if we don't approve it on the city property, how much of the parking lot do you lose? And I still don't understand why you can't configure the parking you need on your parcel as opposed to the city's parcel. I guess that's a 3-part question.
I don't have the answer to your first question, although I would imagine it's very, very small on private property. Like the vast majority of the parking lot that we're proposing is on public property. I would say, I mean, I don't know, it would take some maneuvering with the architects and engineers to figure out where we'd put the parking, but it's tough because, you know, we're straddled with this 3-acre minimum parkland dedication. So a lot of the land to the what is that? The west of that building is taken going to the park. So there's just not a lot of room to put a parking lot anywhere else. And we just thought the parking lot was a creative solution, pay for a parking lot that benefits us and the city, so.
Kurt, Commissioner Paulson, from the packet, I'm looking at page 72, but that might have been before it was amended. It shows, it looks like the entire parking lot is on the city's parcel.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
And the drawing that we're seeing in council chambers almost looks like there is no frontage for the park on city property. Is that?
The public road will be city property. Garden District Drive.
The new public.
The new, okay, but the whole issue of wanting to make sure there's great visibility from something besides, Garden District Drive or whatever. It looks like all of the frontage along Parmenter is taken up by your building. And that,
Yeah, because that design of the parking lot assumes that the land swap occurs.
Correct.
I think one of the other concerns about this too was, if you do want to connect, and I don't want to. I know we said earlier, I don't want to plan a park before it happens, but I'm going to live in a hypothetical for a moment. If you want to connect the Creek Corridor Trail into the park, does this create enough space between the parking lot and the river and the creek bed to be able to do that?
Wouldn't it be attached via bridge? Is there a trail on that side of the road? I think the trail's on the other side of the creek.
Currently.
Because at least there's a bridge shown in this plan.
Yeah. Well, I'm not gonna worry about that right now, because, I think that was from a different time, but, still, if you wanted to connect into the park from Parmenter, is there enough space to be able to do it? If you wanted to have a sidewalk or something, or a path going in from Parmenter into the park with the parking lot there, is there enough space? And I think that was another concern that we brought up at our meeting a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I think we could be flexible on the building, how far south it goes to, if that was, a request from the plan commission or the council, so that there is room for a path.
What is the distance from the edge of the parking lot, the southern edge of the parking lot, to what we're calling the Creek Corridor, where it really starts sloping down? It doesn't look like it's very far at all.
I don't have that answer. But, like I said, we can be flexible. I mean, we threw this parking lot down as as something that we thought we could make work, but if there's an intent to have a path connection on that side, we can be flexible with that.
I mean,
Or design around it.
I just want to, I guess I want to kind of just lay out my thoughts here.
ahead.
I think after listening to Nick's explanations about where Parks was on this, and it makes sense to me to try to maximize the parkland exposure on Parmenter from a public perspective. That makes a lot of sense to me. It seems to me like the GDP was approved that way. Not if the applicant got directions that this parkland swap was going to go forward, there seems to be a change in that thought processing from PRFC at this point in time. And I personally don't want to make a motion to change their recommendations. They've done a lot of thought about it. So, that would be my position.
thank you. Any other commissioners have thoughts to share?
Well, if we go back to that picture that we were just looking at, the proposed building that's shown on that particular diagram also requires the land swap to be approved, right? That's not consistent with the GIP.
Correct.
Right.
So to answer that question is, and correct me if this is wrong, Abby, but I believe the GIP was approved before the city had a contract signed on Latitude Graphics or before you closed on Latitude Graphics. So,
That probably is true.
right,
yeah.
so you couldn't count on Latitude Graphics at that time. And then Latitude Graphics was added. And that's why Saul was in flux. But as Lisa said, is there a compromise? Is there something here? I don't know for sure, but let's just break it down to the simple components. One, the land swap, you seem not to like that. So let's say we forget about that. We'll have to rethink that building because there's parking for it is only underground. So we'll have to make sure it's sized right. The parking lot behind, that's up to you. We were offering to pay for that so the taxpayers don't have to pay for it. If you don't want it, we won't do it. It's a free parking lot. There is a precedent for it on Terrace Avenue. The parking lot there is licensed or easement to Middleton Station for shared use with the public. The infiltration, again, that was a compromise. There's some information here that's been omitted to you, and that is that we have been proposing that the stormwater for the public street, that we would take care of that for the city. We would do that underground underneath our private property. So all the stormwater is going to be retained underground under private property, including the city's public street. In exchange, we asked the city to allow us, basically it's down to 0.11 acre. Literally, let me say that again, 0.11 acre for the infiltration to be shared infiltration underground in the park at that exact location. The reason for that is because of the numerous soil borings that have been taken by the environmental engineers. That is the only place that infiltration can go because of the soils. That is the only place appropriate soils exist. The alternative is that if you want, it's up to you, is that we say the heck with sharing stormwater. We'll just do our own stormwater. You, the city, do your own stormwater for your public properties. And then we'll have to do some kind of major expensive underground cutting of soils and replacement of soils for the infiltration. So that's the alternative if you want us to do that. Obviously, it increases the rents. It means you have a much higher cost for the taxpayers, but we can do that. The infiltration basin he proposed here is underground. The land above is entirely usable. To say that you can't put a building on it, so what? It's 0.11 acres out of 5 acres. Does a building have to go right there? No. So the other thing is that Bruce Company is offering to dedicate the land for the embankment in the creek as part of the 3-acre dedication. City is saying, or City Parks Commission, whatever, is saying, we want the 3 acres, but we're only going to give you credit for 2 acres. That's an unconstitutional taking without compensation. Can't do that. The ordinances, our attorney went through the ordinances. There's nothing in the ordinances that says anything about active or passive use of the park. That's a completely made up fabrication. Doesn't exist in the ordinances. It is not lawful.
I'm going to interrupt you right
So what
there,
I'm saying-
Mr. Wall. You started off on the right track
Right.
within the spirit of compromise, but can I just remind you that under our ordinance, this development should be dedicating 26.6 acres of parkland.
Right. And so if you look at-
26.6. So the city has compromised a great deal. And on top of that,
Yeah, it's a 14-acre site.
I have the floor.
So-
I understand. But on top of that, if we decide to have a dedication and a fee in lieu of, which is allowed,
Yes.
that is in our ordinance,
Yeah.
and it's solely at the discretion of us to do that. If we were to calculate the fee for the 23.6 acres that you should be dedicating and won't, that is over $7 million. So what you're getting is a bargain at $371,000 for a parkland dedication fee to make up for the less than 3 acres that the city already greatly compromised on.
I don't think that's how it's calculated, but Bell Farm Development, right down Parmenter Street, which is a much larger land area development, only was required to dedicate 3 acres. And it's a much, much bigger.
That's
land development.
because the city
So-
can compromise when
Right.
we recognize that obviously if it's 14 acres, you cannot dedicate the 26.6 acres.
So I am proposing a compromise, you know, it's up to you. If you don't want the land swap, we'll just have to redesign that building. The parking lot, you tell us if you want a shared parking lot, we'll build it and pay for it and save the taxpayer money. If you don't, that's fine. The infiltration, that's up to you. If you want to have us take care of the city stormwater and in exchange, we can pay for and build the infiltration on 0.11 acres. We'll do that. If you don't want that, fine. But I'm still saying that the 3 acres under your ordinances have to count as part of the dedication. If you're requiring the 3 acres, then you have to count that as part of the dedication. And then the fee in lieu goes down. I'd be willing to donate, I say I, but you know, Bruce Company and us, we'd be willing to donate a play set or something for park improvement, you know, on top of the 3 acres if you want, subject to the Parks Commission approving it and deciding it where it goes in the plan and everything down the road. We're willing to compromise, but you know, we do need the infiltration in that spot, or it's a major expense and then housing becomes less affordable. So that's my proposal for you to flush out and see if there's anything in there for you that you like. You know?
I appreciate the proposal. I will note that the dedication of the creek corridor, that was listed separately in council's motion approving the GDP. So it was clear that that was separate from the 3 acres of parkland. I would also note that under Wisconsin statutes, in the section on the conditions for approval, in the subsection, quote, improvement of land for public parks means grading, landscaping, installation of utilities, construction of sidewalks, installation of playground equipment, and construction or installation of restroom facilities on land intended for public park purposes. We wouldn't allow any of that to happen in the creek corridor or in an environmental corridor. So it seems pretty clear to me that the dedication of parkland cannot include conservancy land or environmental corridor land.
The ordinance.
I'm citing Wisconsin statute.
So I just want to be clear. Are you then saying that Wisconsin statute invalidates Middleton ordinance, which says streams, woodlands, and wetland plants?
I'm saying,
That's a big assertion without Matt Fleming here to say that Middleton ordinance is wrong.
well, there are a lot of assertions going on without attorney review. So, and we will, council will be discussing that a week from tonight. But I'm willing to bet that if there's a definition in Wisconsin statutes about what the state is requiring of municipalities who have subdivision ordinances, I would think the state is probably the final authority.
Respectfully, I think we're playing ice and fire here. I think the statute that you're citing is totally unrelated to parkland dedication. I think what you're citing is something related to parkland. I would love to review the statute and discuss it with Matt, seeing as how that seems to be like more of a legal analysis.
Sure.
But as it relates to the ordinance that we're talking about right now, which is parkland dedication, there is no reference to the word active parkland
And
at all. So it
understood.
seems
I
like
understand.
it's
I
some
understand.
arbitrary and
And it
capricious
seems
move
like
by parks to
it's-
kind of
It seems like shorthand used by the staff and the committees and the commissions and the council, and it's touching a nerve because it doesn't show up in the ordinance. But we understand what the plain language of active parkland is. It's the difference between a nature preserve and the ability to actually use the land. And our ordinance does, Abby, bring up your slide that shows what we say. Also, something else for you and Matt to hash out. If the subdivider elects to dedicate land under this paragraph, unless the municipality, town, or county agrees otherwise, the subdivider may only dedicate land that is consistent with the municipalities, towns, or county's park plan and comprehensive plan. And our parks board thinks this is not consistent.
Well, and I think the issue that we've had, and I think Abby, you astutely identified it, is the history of this project. Multiple councils, multiple plan commissions, and specifically in this case, multiple park commissions. It seems like, Mr. Adams, maybe you've run the gambit and you've been here since 2020 in the Parks Committee, is that correct? Okay, so then it seems like the Park Committee has changed their focus after we got our GDP approval. And it's kind of changing the rules as we're playing the game. You cite that you want to get affordable housing and you want to get this development going, and I hear that, but we can't dedicate land and also pay a fee.
So I'm going to interrupt for a moment because
Go ahead, Commissioner.
there's a precedent that was actually already set with Red Tail Ridge. Red Tail Ridge, this is less than a year ago, came to us and asked, hey, can we dedicate this piece of land towards our parks dedication? And the piece of land was not able to be active parkland. We rejected it. PRC rejected it. Planning Commission rejected it. City Council rejected it. That's why when we say active parkland, we have set the precedent. They did not get that to count towards their park dedication, this little strip of land. We actually thought maybe it'd be better for conservancy lands. Honestly, I look at that creek corridor, that would probably be better for conservancy lands, not parkland. Yes, sometimes there is a gray area. What is conservancy land? What is parkland? But when we think of parkland, you know, when I think of a park, I think of a place where I could go play baseball, I could go throw a frisbee, I could take my dog and run around, you know, the kids can run around, have a good time. I'm not seeing them doing that in a creek corridor with a whole bunch of trees.
But trees are good for
They
parks,
are
correct?
good, but how
So
can
are
you
we
be
taking net
active?
acreage and we're saying it's just open fields that count? And I want to address something specifically because I hear this
I'm sorry.
all the time.
I'm sorry.
No,
I'm chairing this meeting. I've shown a lot of flexibility here, but we have to have order. So please ask to be recognized. Yes, go ahead.
The reference to precedent. This is the only municipality I do business in. We do developments all over the state that references precedent. There is no precedent in the ordinance that says that just because you did something with Red Tail, you have to do it here. Middleton, love the ordinance, has given great deference and individuality to each development to give staff, Plan Commission, the various committees that we have to go through, and Common Council inevitably, the ability to make that discretion on a case-by-case basis. This is not Red Tail Acres. This is an urban infill development. This is entirely different. So I think to even cite a precedent from Red Tail on what Encore did is totally, it's like citing Bishop's Bay in relation to Bruce Company. I acknowledge, as my development work with Bishop's Bay, that is wholly different from the Bruce Company development that we're proposing here. So I don't, it's kind of a set off point for Terrence and I to reference, you know, these precedences and use them against us.
Thank
You
you.
know, I'm
And,
looking-
but
oh, sorry.
may I just comment,
Yep.
Commissioner? Well, we just heard the precedent of, well, in Bell Farm, you allowed such and such, and so why aren't we, you know, held to the same standard? So,
That's
so,
Terrence, that's not me to
okay,
say that.
just making it clear. But what you said is that the Parks Commission, back in the past, seemed to take a different approach than they are now.
On this specific development.
Yes,
correct.
and what you are asking collectively is for the Plan Commission and the council to take a different approach to what the previous council and Plan Commission did by not considering the Creek Corridor dedication separate from the 3-acre parkland dedication.
Yeah. All due respect, as a former Parks Commission member from 2019 to 2021, you are questioning the historical intent of the PRFC, and it has always been maintained that it is usable land. We have the lowest fees for fees in lieu, and that's not even being calculated here. So I was not a voting member when this went through, but I would question as to why there are no fees in lieu in addition to this negotiated parkland dedication, which should always, and from my time from 2019 on, has maintained usable parkland.
May I ask Commissioner Adams was going to say
Yeah,
something?
I was just gonna say, you know, the citation of the ordinance, I'm also looking at the ordinance on the screen right now, and the determination of land suitability will be at the sole discretion of the Planning Commission at the recommendation of PRFC. The PRFC made a determination that parts of that land were not suitable for parkland.
Thank you, Abby.
I will note Commissioner Paulson's had his
Oh,
hand raised too for about 10 minutes
Commissioner
now.
Paulson, sorry.
Oh, no, this is, I think we can kind of solve this issue without reference to precedent. And just based on the plain language of the ordinance, as Nick was pointing out. You know, council determined 3 acres of parkland, not land, but parkland, meaning land intended to be used as a park. right? That's the clear definition of parkland. So any land to be dedicated for the intended park must be suitable to the park, not suitable to preservation in general, but suitable to the park purposes. So I think just on the plain reading of the ordinance, we have the requirement to make a determination, right, which is reasonably fact specific. But I think what we have before us from PRFC is that heavily sloped creek corridor land is not suitable to a park. Therefore, it's not parkland, right? Period, full stop. I don't understand why this has to be overly complicated. I mean, Terrence's attorney himself has pointed to this section of the statute, the plain or ordinance. The plain reading is that it needs to be adaptable to the park use, and that we make that determination of suitability to the park use. And I know I'm talking in circles, but it has to be parkland, meaning use for a park. And creek corridor is great to preserve, but is not useful for a park.
Yep. And also we have separate plans. I mean, the what is it? The Community Outdoor Recreation Plan has all over it for conservancy lands. See the conservancy lands plan, because we consider those to be completely separate entities.
Although since I made a reference to Taylor's letter, I don't know if he wants to respond on the reading of the ordinance.
If I could, I just, 1906 3K1 specifically says consideration for parkland, not land, not park, parkland, shall be given to the preservation of scenic and historic sites, stands of trees, which is going on here, marshes, ponds, streams, and woodland, prairie, wetland, plant, and animal communities. So, I mean, I hear you, Kurt.
To the extent they contribute to the park use.
Okay, so if we go through with a bulldozer tomorrow and level all the trees, how would parks feel about that? I mean, to the extent, my recommendation, my client is, if you're not giving us parkland dedication, sure, I'll give you an easement. You can walk on it with our written permission, but we're going to do whatever we want to do with it. So, and again, I'm not the determinator, but that.
How many trees do you own on your property?
Well, how many?
You could bulldoze.
Whatever. How many trees are on? I mean, not the ones in your nursery.
Well, isn't most of the corridor outside of property you currently own anyway?
No, the property line goes to
The creek, middle of the creek.
goes to the middle of the creek first.
Oh, okay. Not on some of the maps that we had, but okay.
Lisa, what I was going to suggest is I trust Matt Fleming. He's always been a straight shooter, right? He doesn't take sides. He'll read the law and he'll make a fair decision whether we agree or not. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. So, I'd recommend we ask him to tell us, what I mean?
But we need to make a recommendation.
Yeah. Well, or you compromise, you say, look, let's, like I said, count the 3 acres as park dedication. We'll donate some play equipment and compromise and allow us to do the infiltration, shared infiltration on the park and under the park, excuse me. Or if you don't want that, then explicitly say that, we're going to do our own stormwater and infiltration. You'll do your own stormwater and infiltration. And you'll take care of yours and we'll take care of ours on our property.
Commissioner Bruce?
Yes, staff, just because this item has come up a couple of times. The city would be required to do some stormwater management because of the public right of way?
No, and I'm glad that you raised that, because that was a comment that I wanted to respond to. Every platted subdivision, including redevelopment projects that include new streets serving new developments, even when those are eventually turned over to the public, those are required to manage stormwater. So that's true of Community of Bishop's Bay, pretty much every subdivision that has been approved by the city. So categorizing that infiltration basin as only serving a public street and therefore is not considered part of the private development, that would not typically be how we would treat that. And then I just wanted to mention one thing, because the comment kind of got away and maybe it's passed and it doesn't matter, but we do have a room full of people and people on Zoom. So I just want to clarify that Bell Farm did only dedicate 3 acres, but they paid over $1.3 million in fees in lieu of parkland dedication.
Okay. All right, so members, it sounds like we can, Abby, can you bring up the recommendation with the wording?
Yes.
Sounds like there is consensus on not accepting the request to swap lands and not accepting the shared parking lot. Does anybody feel differently?
Should we make that a separate motion?
Is each one separate? Each one separate or?
Yeah, that might be easier.
Okay, all right. I will entertain separate motions for items 3 and 4. And these are recommendations to the council. Don't all speak at once.
This is Adams.
And please
Yes.
identify yourself.
Bliss Nicholson, co-owner of the Bruce Company.
Thank you.
As I sit here and listen, we've been 3+ years working
Please stay,
on this
please stay by
project.
the microphone so the,
Okay, 3+ years working on this project. We've been jacked around in every way that can be jacked around, approval, and then something added to it, and then this and that and everything else. We've come back every time and said, okay, we'll work with you. Then it's something else. I'm getting a feeling that this group just as soon that the Bruce Company moves out of town and goes someplace else. You know how many employees we have that live in Middleton? You know how much revenue we bring here? And it's like, big deal. You know what? We just move out. We'll take the operation someplace else. Okay? Because all I hear is this little hang up about, oh, this ordinance, this, oh, we can compromise over here, but we can't compromise there. Come on. Have you ever been out in the real world and find out what's going on?
I'm sorry, sir. Now you're straying over into insulting the.
What?
You're insulting the plan commission.
I'm
I
not insulting, I
appreciate.
just asked you a question.
I appreciate,
gotta do is
the
answer.
answer is yes. I appreciate your passion. I appreciate what the Bruce Company has done for Middleton. I think there has been some jacking
How about
around,
showing that
but
to
it
us
probably
then? How about
goes
showing
both
that?
ways. I've said several times tonight, the actual ordinance says the parkland dedication should be 26.6 acres, and we are compromising in
That
a
wasn't what
big.
it was when we started the process. Now you want to add.
That's,
change it
no,
again and
that's,
again and
that is
again.
what the ordinance
Okay, you
says.
stay with your ordinances, and if you don't want to work with us, we'll find somebody new.
We do want to work.
That's the way it is.
We'd love to see the Bruce Company Garden District go in. There have been many delays. I agree. They have not all come from the city of Middleton. I can assure you of that. In fact, tonight we're having this discussion after we were told it immediately needed to be decided only 3 days later to find out the developer was going to request another delay.
But
So
this
please
group
accept the responsibility.
Responsibility to respond and work.
And we are
People
trying
sit
to move this project forward.
Your responsibility, you're saying we have the authority and we can do this, we can do that. But don't talk about the people that pay the taxes and everything.
Well, we all pay taxes too, sir.
Yeah.
And this action that we were about to take before I recognized you is moving the process forward. It's bringing closure to these 4 policy issues that have been outstanding for, I think, the entire time I've been on council. So we had
Another 3 years.
Commissioner Paulson, were you going to make a
I
motion?
thought Commissioner Adams was about to make a motion.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Adams.
This is Adams. I'll make a motion not to accept the request to have shared parking lot on city parcel and to remove the city-owned parcel to be used for future parkland.
And to remove the parking lot from the
Yes, yes.
city-owned parcel. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Summers will second.
Okay, so Adams, number 4, Adams and Summers. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion to recommend to council that we not accept the request to have a shared parking lot on the city parcel and remove the parking lot from the city-owned parcel to be used for future parkland, signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. Moving on. Number 3, not accept the request to swap lands to allow the city to retain ownership of the Parmenter Road frontage. Do we have someone who wants to make a motion on that one?
This is Adams. I'll make a motion not to accept the request to swap lands to allow city to retain ownership of Parmenter Road frontage.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
Second that.
Okay, Commissioner Bruce seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of not accepting the request to swap lands to allow city to retain ownership of Parmenter Road frontage signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the motion passes unanimously. That
Madam
brings,
Chair,
yes, go ahead.
with regard to number 1 and number 2, would it be reasonable for us to, rather than making a specific recommendation, to seek the advice of Matt Fleming, the legal counsel, as to the interpretation of our ordinance relative to the question specifically of whether we have the authority to determine that the creek corridor, for example, does not count as parkland because it's not suitable for a park? Or would it be the sense of the committee to make that finding and then forward it to council, and presumably Matt Fleming would look at it anyway?
I see your point. I think either way, council and Matt Fleming, or I should say council with Matt Fleming's input, will make the decision. I'm wondering if this commission can make a recommendation one way or the other with the further recommendation that Attorney Fleming weigh in on Plan Commission and council's, or PRFC and Plan Commission's authority to decide what's suitable for land dedication. Does that make sense? Like, we could just toss these two back to council and say, talk to Matt and decide next week. Or we could say that, but recommend that the Plan Commission feels one way or the other.
Right, because it sounds like when council approved the GIP, they made it clear that access to the corridor would be required as a dedication, as a condition of approval. So that, by definition, should not count for parkland because it's a separate category.
Agreed.
But that's not really a finding of land suitability by the Plan Commission. That's a finding of, I guess, legal definitions of what land it counts, right? Because we can make a determination that certain lands are not suitable for parkland because we have the recommendations of PRFC and common sense about slope and those things. But we can't make a determination as to what actually counts for what, on what side of the scorecard, without a legal opinion. I hope that makes sense.
I think it does. I think the difficulty is, again, going back in history, the GDP was approved by council, voluntarily entered into with the developer here with these requirements understood, and now years later, we're being asked to change. The city is being asked to change because the developer wants it to change. I would be inclined to have this commission endorse the recommendation of the PRFC and make yet another motion to have council at its next meeting. Well, do you think Attorney Fleming will be able to produce something by then?
I think you would.
Have Attorney Fleming provide an opinion to the council on our ordinance and the issues that have come up tonight and these past many months, so that we can put to rest once and for all, what does our ordinance allow us to do?
Right, and I just want the minutes to reflect, we can determine suitability for park purposes. I don't think we can determine how much acreage counts in what category of thing, other than whether the acres before us for a park are suitable for that park. I'm sorry, I'm trying to split the question, but.
Well, when we get to that motion, Mr. Paulson, I'll ask you.
Oh, gosh.
So maybe you could start drafting while we deal with items 1 and 2.
Kurt, are you suggesting that the 1.6 or 1.9 acre land dedication along the creek corridor could include land that would be suitable for park? I was under the impression.
No, the question is, what specific land, like show it on a map and count the size of it, is required by the GIP approval from council that required dedication of access to the corridor? Because that's a separate requirement. That should be netted out of what the 3 acres are. Then we should make a separate determination on whether the environmental corridor and various parts of that map that are steeply sloped, how much of that is suitable for park purposes. Because we're conflating 2 things, right? Some of it is mandatory dedication agreed to by the GIP, which is access to the corridor. But does that include the corridor?
I thought that was relatively clear that was part of the. I thought that was dedicated as part of the plat. Is that not? Isn't that shown on the plat?
Yes, I'm trying to pull it up from the packet here.
We just want to make sure that, right, the concern is that the developer is trying to double count, and we want to be accurate in our count as well.
Well, it's not a concern that they're trying to double count. They're trying to count land that we consider, I guess it is double counting, but double counting sounds like unscrupulous, whereas it's more like they're counting the creek corridor and we consider that a separate item because it is referenced separately in the conditions of approval. And the rezoning was contingent on the 3 acre minimum dedication of parkland. That was.
Right, so the 0.6 acres listed in the motion, that is creek corridor, right?
Yes. There's 0.6 that the Parks Board recommended excluding from the active parkland calculations. That's
Right.
the corridor.
Because it's already been dedicated.
It has not yet been dedicated. The city only got a temporary limited easement, but because the preliminary plat or the final plat for this development hasn't been approved, it has not yet been dedicated. So the creek corridor is still under ownership of the Bruce Company.
Well, it hasn't been dedicated, but it has been treated separately in council's motion to approve.
Correct, yes.
Right. So that's a definitional question. That 0.6 acres cannot count for parkland, right? That's different than a suitability determination that the rest of the environmental corridor is unsuitable for park purposes.
So what you're saying, if I may, is that bullet or item number 1, we shouldn't be, a cleaner motion would have been to consider as, which is consistent with the original council approval, the 3 acre parkland dedication is separate from and does not include the creek corridor dedication. Is that what you're getting at? Because that
Yes, yes, but the, you know, how much of that includes the corridor and how much includes the banks, and show it on a, it's hard to show it on a map because we don't have the preliminary plat yet.
Mhm.
We can accept the recommendation of the PRFC that the 1 acre of land that is in the environmental corridor is unsuitable for park purposes and therefore should not count for the park dedication, right? That's what we're being asked to make a determination about.
Is that a
I think the
question? or
I think the
statement?
infiltration issue is slightly different, but
Yeah, that's not even on the list. 1 second. Yes,
Yeah, just a
Taylor.
minor question. Abby, do you mind pulling up, you pulled up the history of the approvals and I thought it said it was an easement for maintenance that the city would be granted.
Oh, the temporary limited easement? Is
Yeah.
that what you mean?
Yep, I didn't see dedication, but maybe I'm wrong. If you could just pull it
Okay,
back up.
let me pull that up. There was a separate, I believe you're right that there was a separate bullet point for a temporary limited easement from the dedication of the banks. Let me just. Okay. Okay, so this was the council action when they approved the GIP on 9/7, which is that document that I pulled up that does not show the L-shaped building and it doesn't show anything on city land. It says preparation and approval of a plat, which will need to include land dedication along the creek corridor in order for the city to provide basic maintenance of the Pheasant Branch Creek, period. Depending on the timing of the plat approval, the city will need at least a temporary limited easement from the Bruce Company to begin creek restoration next spring. And that, my understanding is that was granted and that work was done with the temporary limited easement, but the permanent dedication has not occurred.
can you go up one slide to the slide before that? So this is a motion by Burke that asks that the developer makes the following changes to the GIP. Item number 3, dedicate a minimum of 3 acres of parkland. That does not say dedicate the creek corridor, is that correct?
This one does not, no.
But the next motion,
Yeah, they were giving direction for how they wanted the developer to revise the GIP.
so then back to slide 5, which is what they actually voted on. That's more ambiguous as to what counts as creek corridor dedication that is required, separate from parkland dedication.
Without the attached map,
Which is the next slide.
it's, yeah, it's hard to say. So is that 3 acres showing?
It was labeled on their submittal as 3.18 acres, but in the current preliminary plat that's been submitted, there is a change in the property line here. There appears to be a slight reconfiguration in the public street that changed the boundary here. There originally was, it was showing that there was going to be a cutout here for a sign to remain, and that is no longer showing on the preliminary plat. But we don't have this in a GIS shapefile. And so the map that Daphne was showing, which I'm going to stop share so that she can bring that up, that was our best guess based on the recommendation that was made by PRFC. I did share it with Jake Buns, and I asked if they had a better map that they could share with us to make the calculations, because we're going, you know, roughly trying to align what was being proposed with what already exists on the site and property lines. So this is the best that we can get. And I don't know, Daphne, if you want to add anything to that on how we calculated this.
I mean, so you can kind of see where the map changes colors. I've taken, snips. So this, this white part is the preliminary plat that I've taken it from, and I've kind of, merged it onto parcels in order for the parcels to match. Previously, the Parks Department or the Park PRFC, the commission, they were looking at this darker line here, which is the elevation line of 919. And that's kind of the top of slope area. And so, they've looked at, other, I believe I have it here. So this is, 3.3 acres goes all the way to the property line. And then this was 2.79 acres to the floodplain line. And so they've looked at all of these, different maps, and they determined from those maps that they wanted to include this environmental corridor instead. So that's kind of how all of these maps were created.
Commissioner Bruce.
I thought the 919 was referenced in one of the motions, maybe from PR Parks. I thought that was a specific benchmark. Does anybody recall that, seeing that?
Yeah, that's listed in the recommended motion for us. Create a buffer from the top of the slope at 919 elevation to where the dedicated parkland begins.
See.
I think the idea of the didn't go right to the creek bed or the creek banks, to be able to create, in case of another flood event or something like that, to kind of create a space between active parkland and potentially catastrophic flooding lines.
Just 1 second, Jake. Abby, would you bring up the memo for tonight's meeting, the one dated July 3rd? And while Jake's up there, I'll ask, is the proposed underground detention infiltration facility easement 0.25 acres or 0.11 acres?
0.11.
0.11. Okay. You're sure?
Yeah, I had to double check that today as well.
Okay. So Abby, in this memo, it says that the second bullet, the Parks PRFC recommended that only active parkland be counted toward the 3-acre parkland dedication requirement. This means that the following land would be excluded from the 3-acre calculations. So 0.25, which apparently is 0.11. And then here it says the environmental corridor is 1 acre, and that includes the creek corridor and the banks.
Yes.
But on the recommendation page, it sounds like that 1 acre of land and this 0.6 acres of land are suggested as being separate.
The entirety of the creek corridor and banks is within the environmental corridor.
So that's roughly 1 acre of land.
Right. And again, I tried to couch all of this with roughly and about
Yeah.
because we don't have shape files. So if you have something in CAD or GIS that you can share with us showing how you're calculating the 0.11, we can overlay that and even possibly create a legal description of it if needed, which would really help with us evaluating it because the maps have changed several times and we're kind of scrambling trying to overlay it without having the details.
And I will say, as designs evolve with the stormwater system, that land area changes and contracts depending on how much is impervious. But right now it's 0.11. You can see right here. This is the latest. You guys probably can't see that, but
Okay.
So
And just to be clear, Bruce Holding Company is not at all interested in paying a fee in lieu of?
well, we were just talking, in the interest of compromise, would the PRFC and Plan Commission be willing to forego the park in its entirety and we would pay the fee in lieu for that whole area? We're just trying to throw stuff on the table here.
I don't think we can answer that.
I'm not
without
going to speak for the
calculating.
Yeah.
PRFC.
Yeah.
yeah, and we haven't determined what the shortage is yet. If it's 3 acres required, now we're saying you have provided 2 acres, not you're 1 acre short. But that's different than the calculations in one of the packets.
Well, the proposed or the calculated fee for the 1.89, assuming it's a 1.89 acre dedication,
1.85.
Okay,
Yep.
so it's 371,680.
That's per acre. Yeah, that's based on if there's a deficiency of 1.15 acres. So that's if they're combining parkland dedication with fees in lieu. But what he's asking is, would the city
Right.
accept
No,
just fees in lieu? And that would be based on a fair market value calculation of the land. And our city assessor estimated that that's around 323,000, I think, per acre.
Per acre.
Would that be of the parkland or 328,000? What would that be multiplied by? How many?
It would
acres?
be multiplied by the total requirement per the city's ordinance, which would be 26.8 acres. 3 is the negotiated down amount that the city agreed on, but if you're asking instead to not dedicate the parkland and go by the city's ordinance, it would be a lot higher. That's why, and we understood that this was a redevelopment project, so that's why, like, the compromise was made, because our ordinance application in this case did not make sense for the land dedication requirements. And so that's why it was negotiated down to only 3 acres.
So again, back to my question. So the $371,000 calculated fee is a deal breaker for you all?
We would do the fee and not do a public park. We would still have some parkland that would be privately owned. If you want it, we own the park, we pay the whole fee, and then we'll still have open space there. We're gonna do the stuff we want to be able to do.
Sorry, for the matter of people on Zoom, can you come up to the
Oh,
microphone?
yeah. Thank you, Commissioner Summers.
So how much would the fee be, Abby, like? Ballpark?
Well, honestly, the fee, again, if we don't go with the negotiated 3 acres, the fee reverts back to, or the required dedication reverts back to 26.6 acres. So the fee would be
Very high.
very high.
No, yeah, that would work. Yeah.
And that's why,
It'd be over 7 million.
and that's what's confusing to me, because it seems like,
Yeah.
one,
Right.
this is a good deal to only have to dedicate 3 acres. And two, if there's
Yeah.
willingness, we've heard that the Parks Board really wants 3 acres, but we know that's difficult.
Well, we're agreeing to the 3 acres. We're saying it, let it
But
count.
you're counting,
Yeah,
right?
You're gonna make your decision, whatever, we have to live with that. So go ahead and make your decision, and then we'll live with it, and then look at what can we do on infiltration, you know?
So who wants to? I mean,
I'm not sure how we can make a decision if we don't know exactly how much we're counting,
Well,
or do we?
Are we not just recommending that the 3 acres of parkland be separate from the creek corridor plan, the creek corridor dedication?
What sounds like PRFC is saying the entire environmental corridor, which is larger than the creek corridor, is a full acre approximately. That should not be considered suitable for parkland
That's what we decided.
in this case, yes.
and so that would leave 1.85 or 89 acres for parkland, which the PRFC was okay with. Not happy with,
Right.
but could accept
Yes.
in
I
the
mean,
spirit of compromise. Yeah. With a fee in lieu
Mhm.
charged for the, whatever the,
You know, we're not asking the developer to give us more.
Right.
Land out of this development. But yes, we would be accepting of that land.
yeah.
That would be dedicated, yeah.
So then under paragraph 7 of that chapter of the ordinance, we basically have to make a finding that they've not provided the full amount required, and therefore we accept a fee in lieu.
Mhm.
Right? Because that,
That's what we as a PRC came to the conclusion of, is that when you subtract the creek corridor, the filtration, we've already kind of talked about the parking lot, that would be, well, the parking lot would have been in city anyways, but that would be part of the, that we would accept the roughly just under 2 acres of parkland, and then the deficit would be made up with fees in lieu.
Well, and what if we just forgot about I'm going to say 0.11, I'll trust Jake's calculations. What if we just disregarded that? As long as it's accessible for maintenance? What if that is, and again, just to be clear, this is a compromise already because it's on video that all the stormwater would be managed on the development's property. So the city already spent, we're talking about delays earlier, we had to go through the process of having everybody, all the committees with any kind of say, weigh in on, should we set a precedent for allowing stormwater management for a private development to be placed under city parkland? So that's what, an 8-month delay that we've had because of that? Kylie, I recognize you.
Yeah, Kylie, Share, Parks and Rec Director. So just that 1.1 is correct on there for the stormwater. But what our engineering department, or what was it? I'm sorry.
0.11.
I always do this. I'm so sorry. 0.11 acres for that stormwater is correct. But then the easement, our engineering department did review that, and about 0.25 was maintenance easement that they would need. And that's what they typically set up for any easement, is a 10-foot on both sides. And that's where we came up with that, or it came out of from our engineer department. So that's the
Okay.
0.25. So.
Okay.
Which includes the 0.11. That includes the.
That includes the 0.11. So it's roughly double. I don't want to set any precedents with this, but I will say, Commissioner Adams may recall, I was advocating for allowing Red Tail Ridge to dedicate some conservancy land, and because I feel that that is useful. I don't see a way to reach an agreement without the development having to pay some fee in lieu. I cannot imagine the PRFC or the council would accept not having a park. I mean, this is a big deal for all of our districts to have more parkland available and more parks. So I don't see that going away. Plus, if we reverted back to the ordinance and went with the 26.6 acres, your fee in lieu would be way more than the 370,000 or whatever that's being proposed. I can, if commissioners are willing, I can not subtract the 0.11 or 0.25 from the 3 acres and leave that as part of it. That would cut down the fee a little bit. This is sort of a shell game. I could imagine saying, okay, what if we change your dedication requirement to 4 acres and we count 1 acre at the creek corridor and environmental corridor as one of those acres? That still leaves the difference for which you'd have to pay a fee, but it would open the door possibly to having future dedications involve conservancy lands and not just parkland. Again, that's kind of a shell game because it's giving you credit, but also requiring you to dedicate more. So that credit kind of wipes away. I guess we could split the difference and say 3.5 acres and we'll let you count 1. I don't know, commissioners, I'm just trying to think creatively in the spirit of compromise. Staff have any opinion on that? Anybody? I just happen to be looking that way.
I'm just wondering why we would use why we would count active recreation, conservancy land as active recreation. I'm missing that part.
We wouldn't.
Oh, I thought you
It-
just said that.
What I'm saying is, I recognize that the city distinguishes between conservancy lands and park lands, parks and conservancies, and I understand why that's the case. But I think in situations where land is limited and where we do not own all the conservancy land, obviously a previous council wanted that land, and that previous council did not give us a very specific, precise set of conditions that would allow us to point to it and say, look, there's 3 acres of parkland, and there's right underneath that is the dedication of the conservancy corridor. That would make this a lot easier. But to have it divided between a couple of different meetings in a couple of different avenues, one being a motion on a map, or, after seeing a map versus the conditions of approval, it puts us in a difficult situation. And we all want to see this development go forward. So I don't know, commissioners, what do you think?
My feeling is that Parks and Recreation Committee, I thought evaluated it appropriately. I think they're the ones that need to be looking at what's appropriate for parkland. I think their offer of accepting less than 3 acres, but then allowing a fee in lieu was totally in the interest of compromise. And I would support that
Okay.
recommendation.
If no one has a different thought, then
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, I think barring any compelling evidence to the contrary, it makes sense to go with what PRFC said and to follow our own common sense that land that is unsuitable for a park purpose is not land that can be accepted as a parkland donation. And they've made the determination that that 1 acre of the environmental corridor meets that definition. And we've not seen any kind of compelling land suitability argument from the applicant to tell us otherwise. We've seen some ordinance interpretation.
yeah.
And if we're overturned by our own city attorney, that's outside of our scope. Our scope is the land suitability for park purposes. And I've not heard any testimony to tell me why this creek corridor and environmental corridor land is suitable for the park purposes. And that's all been hashed out at PRFC. So we support our fellow commissioners absent some compelling evidence.
Okay. Abby, can you bring up your, the packet again to show the recommendation? So I'm looking then, I guess, if I can sum up what I've heard from the commission, looking for a motion to, and I think we can lump 1 and 2 together because they are related. A motion to accept or to recommend to council that they accept the PRFC recommendation to do number 1 and number 2. And I'm troubled by the creek corridor and banks being separate. I would take that one out.
Yeah.
And again, I'm willing to take out the first one too. So that would reduce it to 2 acres.
And Madam Chair, can I suggest that instead of using the language of active parkland, which is not in our ordinance, we just say parkland,
Okay.
which is land suitable for the park purposes under 19.06 sub 3 sub K sub 6.
All right, can you type that? Is that you typing, Abby? Can you take
This
out,
is me.
can you take out active?
Okay, so we would strike active.
Would it make sense to say non-environmental corridor or land not mapped as environmental corridor? be
No,
mapped?
well, I liked what Commissioner Paulson was saying, and I'm sorry you're working in a in a PDF and not Word, because I think it should say only parkland. How did you phrase it, Commissioner?
Parkland
That's,
suitable for park
Some-
development,
yeah,
or I have the exact phrase from our ordinance. Land that is suitable for the intended park use.
there you go. So change development, intended park use.
And therefore we make a finding that land, roughly 1 acre of land mapped as an environmental corridor is not suitable for park use,
So
right?
that,
Because our ordinance says we need to make a determination. So I want us to make a determination on the record that we find that 1 acre approximately is not suitable for park land use. You know, following the recommendation of PRFC. And I want us to be just careful and precise on the language so that if the lawyers overrule us, they overrule us.
maybe Abby change it to say the PRFC has made a determination. No,
As recommended by the PRFC,
my mind,
is
what?
not suitable for parkland use.
Right there, the PRFC.
Huh.
Yeah, before land, the PRFC has, what did you say, Commissioner Paulson?
Has recommended,
Or has
has
determined?
determined,
Well, the PRFC is advisory to.
yeah,
So should we say recommended
yes.
Or advised?
or advised is fine?
That land that is mapped
Mapped in an environmental corridor,
for parkland use.
including the creek corridor and banks.
Well, isn't that,
I think that's included in the phrase environmental corridor. Yes, so strike that, sorry.
maybe take that parenthetical out, Abby, and put environmental corridor, capital E, capital C, so that it's clear we're referring to that.
It's
Right
above
here?
that.
Yep, so it's not just a generic term, it is, well, capital E environmental, capital C corridor.
Oh, I see,
Sorry.
I see what you're saying.
It's late.
Right. Should I reflect that this is the CARP C? Do you want to include that?
And
In CARP C's environmental corridor, sure. There you go. And, okay, so that would be item 1, and then that item 2 would disappear. And then the remaining deficit from the negotiated 3-acre parkland dedication requirement be made up by paying fees. Can you bring that number 2 up?
Okay, so this would be this.
Yep.
Let me get rid of all of this just to make it more clear.
And then,
Well, actually, the plan commission determines. Number 1 is a determination.
Thank you.
and then I would change parkland to land, and I would allow parkland to stay in at the after 3-acre.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And may I ask how the fee in lieu of land dedication would be calculated? Do we need to talk about that, or is that just a given?
That's,
It's always calculated based on the fair market value of the deficit, which our city assessor determines. But if you want to include that language, we could.
and the deficit,
I would not, because our ordinance says that we can determine that if there's a deficit, it's made up by paying for a fee in lieu, but 1906 does not specify how that's calculated. Presumably, that's just with the city assessor and the finance department and council.
okay.
But Abby, since they determined that, right?
Can you come to the microphone, please?
I believe Abby, they came up with a number. Could you just include that in there? So it's clear.
So, yeah, the fair market value determination as made by the city assessor is calculated at, and this is up to the discretion of the plan commission, whether or not you want to include this in your motion, but I'll type it out so you can see it.
Yeah,
Anybody have that number handy?
323,200.
323,200?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And so that compares to times the 1 acre, right? In the packet that we got, it was estimated at, I think, 371,680
Yeah, and
So
that was
that's
based on a
on 1 point, right?
acre deficit.
So,
Well, and this allows that once we get the actual GIS shape files of a plat, we'll know whether that environmental corridor is a full acre or not.
Yep. So.
So-
Abby, are the staff comfortable with us? I don't know how certain the fair market value determination was made, whether that 323,200 per acre is something that we want to, as part of this motion, or do we want that just to be something that is calculated at the time?
I think it could go either way. The determination has already been made, and I don't think that there would be a reason to change it.
Okay.
okay. So
So we
we,
want to include it on the end of number 2 here.
yes.
Okay.
And Mr. Opitz,
Just a quick question. So the plan commission determines that? Is that how you want that to read?
Yes,
And then two shalls, I think, should be added. Only land that is deemed suitable for the intended park use shall be. Isn't that what you mean?
Shall.
Otherwise, it doesn't really read right.
oh, yeah, shall be counted.
yes.
And then in the second, it's also in the second one,
Okay.
park.
Shall be counted
Yeah.
in the first line.
Uh,
Only land that is deemed suitable for the intended park use shall be. There you go.
Yeah, that's on there, but was there another shall that should be inserted?
You're right there. You're right
Okay.
at it.
That's okay.
Terrence told me a few months ago I'd be a good attorney, so there you go.
He also thinks he should be a good attorney, just saying.
Okay, so looking at this, I don't think anyone has yet made this motion. Who
That
would-
will be my motion.
All right, Commissioner Paulson makes the motion that's showing on the screen. Who
Harp
would-
will second.
Okay, so we've got Paulson and Harp. I hope the developer feels like the city has compromised yet again.
One question, the infiltration.
Please take the microphone.
Don't blow this up now, Terrence.
No, exactly. I just want, what are we doing on infiltration, whatever. I just want to make sure it's documented.
Well, you're
whatever you're gonna do.
infiltrating right now.
Yeah.
Could not get
All right,
through
thank
it
you.
without one. Well, we haven't, there's actually another page of recommendations, but these are the ones we're working on. I think this would be, by taking out the point, I'm going to go with 0.25 acres because that's what our city engineer or stormwater engineer came up with. By taking that out and not deducting it from the 3 acre parkland dedication, I think we are acknowledging that we're compromising, dare I say, setting a precedent and allowing for stormwater management to be located, some of it to be located under some of the city's park property. Now, since this may be precedent setting, we're counting on this turning out to be a good thing. So that when others come to us, which they will, as you know, once you set a precedent, people go for it. We want to be able to say, yeah, that was a good experience. So I hope you all
With respect,
something out of this negotiation. I hope commissioners feel like we got something out of it too. Commissioner Paulson, did you have a comment?
yeah, I don't think we take any position on infiltration on public land because that was a condition of the GIP approval. So I don't think we can actually waive that. We're just saying that for now, that's not counted. But
But the recommendation,
the recommendation is that,
well, no, the recommendation that came from PRFC locating the private underground detention and filtration facility within the proposed public parkland appears to be an efficient design solution. Correct?
I think we could, Kurt, I think we could, I agree with you. It was pretty clear in the GIP approval that the stormwater would be separate.
Mhm.
Parkland dedication, at least that was my understanding. But I think we could amend that, recommend an amendment. Be allowed if we want to. I honestly thought we were just being silent on that when we drafted the two paragraphs. If we
Right.
want to be specific, I think we need a third bullet point.
Okay. And what would, if we remain silent on that for now? Is, right, but it is almost 10 after 9 and we've got your other development.
I think we should, let's tackle it because.
Commissioner Bruce, okay.
Yeah, let's tackle it. And I would propose that that as long as the stormwater management could occur below the usable parkland and not interfere with its use and be and be maintained, that we would accept that land as part of the parkland.
Thanks for bringing that back, Randy. I'd agree.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, because I'm seeing now PRFC, they recommended allowing an easement over the area, provided the land is not counted toward parkland dedication requirements, but we're compromising on that and going with, okay. So thank you. Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wall, for the question. Thank you, Commissioner Bruce, for being bold and wanting to tackle it tonight.
Should I say the 0.25 acre land area as proposed to count towards
No,
the parkland dedication?
I think it's a separate thing. You could say recommend allowing an easement over the stormwater management area to occur on parkland, provided that the stormwater management.
Or how about the plan commission has no objection to? Is that another way to phrase it?
Yeah, that's another way to phrase it. But the PRFC, well, I guess they weren't weighing in on the merits of the.
The PRFC's recommendation said allow an easement over the parkland as long as it doesn't count towards the parkland requirement.
Right,
But we were saying that it should count towards the parkland requirement as long as the easement over the parkland does not remove the suitability of the land for parks.
Okay.
Sorry, that was
Thing.
a mouthful.
Okay. Get rid of this.
And not interfere and not,
I think it's better to say as long as the stormwater management could occur below the usable parkland. And just say, keep it to usable parkland.
Do you want to mention?
And yes, and the system could be maintained.
And who maintains the system?
That would be the developer.
then maybe add that by the developer.
Because if they don't maintain it, then the parkland above it will soon become unusable.
Okay, so Commissioner Bruce has moved to amend the main motion to include a new item 2.
The format of it doesn't read quite right. Sorry.
Plan Commission determines that
Allowing an
stormwater
easement-
management may occur on the parkland
Yes, that's how I was thinking.
with an easement over the parkland to count toward,
But you'd say as long as, I think is what you're getting at. It could occur as long as it doesn't interfere or doesn't, whatever the rest of it was.
may,
Sorry. I
you
don't know
say
if
it, no, you say it.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to channel Abby's words and not alter it too much. So you determine that, I mean, essentially what the way I was looking at is
Take the,
determine that the easement, the infiltration easement area could be within the parkland as long as it counts toward, or as long as the management could occur, et cetera.
I
I
like
mean, that's
that.
essentially what
So
you're
the-
saying is the easement area, the infiltration easement area could be in the parkland as long as the stormwater management could occur below the usable parkland and the system could be maintained by the developer. That's essentially what you're saying. Maybe we can just phrase this.
Can you,
That's a better way of saying it, Mark.
I
Yeah.
want to get it precise.
All right, so the infiltration easement area,
So the Plan Commission determines that the infiltration easement area, roughly 0.25 acres,
the stormwater infiltration area, easement area,
add stormwater,
approximately, what do we say,
0.25 acres, may occur underneath. I'm getting tired. May occur on the parkland or under the parkland?
It's
make her beneath, or yeah,
Toward the parkland dedication. As long as
yeah.
The stormwater infiltration easement area may count towards the parkland dedication requirement.
Yeah, parkland dedication requirement. Yeah, so add requirement after parkland dedication. As long as the stormwater management does not interfere with, or does, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it to get at the usability of the parkland.
The stormwater infiltration easement area,
Does not diminish the usable parkland,
I would say doesn't,
doesn't impede the use of parkland.
okay.
may occur under the parkland area as long as it does not impede the, yeah, whatever, sorry, it's too many cooks.
Use of the parkland and the system is maintained by the developer.
Abby's getting her journalism.
What's up?
Okay, so now Commissioner Bruce, is that your amendment?
Let me read it. Yes.
All right, Commissioner Bruce has moved to amend the main motion by inserting item 2.
I will second the amendment.
Commissioner Paulson and seconds the amendment. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of amending the main motion to include item 2, the stormwater infiltration easement area, roughly 0.25 acres, may occur under the parkland and count toward the parkland dedication requirement as long as the stormwater management does not impede the use of the parkland and the system is maintained by the developer. Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Now going back to the main motion, which you see on the screen, as amended. I won't read it all because it's showing on the screen. Any further discussion of the main amendment, main motion as amended? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the motion that the Plan Commission determines these 3 things, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Thank you. All right. Commissioners, we have 2 more items on our agenda. I'm going to propose that the last item on the zoning ordinance, unless there's an objection, that we move that one, postpone it to our next meeting and move on to discuss the GDP for Conservancy Bend.
We have a short break now.
Yes, thank you for asking. We'll declare a 10-minute break. So we'll be back at 9:25. Thank you. Thank you for asking, and I shouldn't have made him ask. I should have just offered it.
Yeah, I appreciate that the elected officials do that. That's a new thing. We used to sit through like 11 and they would never take a break.
Oh, I can't even imagine. It might just be assumed that you're going to get up and take a
Yeah.
break if we need to.
I think that's it.
So as long as we have.
Yeah, let
Can
me
you
show you
get
how to
to-
get there.
Do we need a key?
You might get locked out and
Yeah,
Jake's ready.
I'm ready for pets.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're,
Let's wait till you hit
well,
30.
we're updating our CLC plan. We're
I'm
not
not excited
updating our
for that.
parks plan, I don't think, until
You
twenty
confirm now that
twenty-six.
you're not.
I'm not yet.
But
Not
yeah.
almost 29.
I think the CLC plan, they have a
Okay.
survey that's out right now, and
When
they
did you
ask
do that?
about trails
In
and
March.
missing connections and links, stuff like that.
I use that a lot.
It's good. It's encroaching on us quickly.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we just opened the Pleasant View Road overpass, the Ted Bridge. Mark just let me know
That
that
should
it
be a-
opened today.
That should be a press release.
It really should. It's over Pleasant View Road near the golf course. So now you can actually bike out to the new pump track,
Yeah.
to all the way to Blackhawk Ski Club, I think. Yeah.
Okay, folks, good news. It's 9:25. So we can get back. We'll resume the Plan Commission meeting, and the next item of business is the GDP amendment for Conservancy Bend residences at 2431 through 2439 Parmenter Street and 2420 through 2446 Clark Street. And we have staff, do you want to give a very brief background and pull up the recommendation in the
Sure.
packet?
So we received from T-Wall Enterprises here with Jake and Terrence here. Two development concepts. Option 1 consists of a 44-unit building that you saw previously in May. Option 2 consists of a 50-unit building that would include 6 two-bedroom units extending farther west over the underground parking level, which would remain the same size in both scenarios. We do have in our new zoning ordinance, we do have a window of 60 days for the Plan Commission to act. And if the Plan Commission doesn't act, then the council has the right to take that decision and act on that decision with the hearing. So that's why this is before you tonight. I think we have to act by the next meeting in order to make that 60-day timeline. I do want to also add that the zoning process, the GDP process, is like pursuing a zoning amendment. So that means there has to be issuance of formal findings of fact. I have a sheet that outlines what those are. Just pass those down. I should have included them in the staff report. I actually had focused on this as just the PUD amendment process, the GDP process, which is in the staff report with the criteria of evaluation. The only other thing I would add is that the city attorney has provided guidance that the city will need to amend the TIF agreement in order to get the project as defined in the agreement to conform with whatever ends up being built. Any amendment to the TIF agreement will be at the finance committee and council level. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mark. When will the amendment of the TIF agreement be at finance?
Well, it depends on what ends up being recommended.
What happens
here
tonight?
by
Okay.
Plan Commission.
And is that change something that needs to be included in any motion tonight?
Those are separate, but I would defer to Abby on that.
I don't think it needs to be included in any motion. I was just more so wanting to make sure that the statement was made here and that the developer was aware that that would have to be changed because the project would be changing.
Okay.
So you'll recall in May, you asked for the developer to provide some feedback. So I'm sure Jake can speak to that. Or feedback, I mean, to look at options. So,
Yes, Jake, I'll have you walk us through those options, but one more question for you, Mark. Do we need to write the formal findings of facts here tonight? Like more wordsmithing, or do you have something to recommend to us?
well, what I gave you just now in the handout is, I mean, I didn't know, this is the conundrum we have, right? I don't know exactly what you want to do with this item.
Mhm.
And so I don't really know what the formal findings of fact will be. The factors to consider are in the sheet in front of you. And Kurt, I emailed those to you separately so that you would have them. So I put the factors in front of you. I can offer some suggestions. I don't have anything else written beyond this because I frankly wasn't sure what the commission's pleasure, what the pleasure of the commission is.
Okay.
And I do have the evaluation. So for example, the comprehensive plan, item 3, that is complies with comprehensive plan. That is actually addressed in the
In the memo.
criteria for approval. So, but not all of these factors would necessarily apply. So I think it would be good just to have to see what the commission's discussion is, and then I can help you with any motion if you wish.
Okay, Jake, can you walk us through the two options?
Yeah, so basically the feedback I got from the Plan Commission at the May 28th meeting was to incorporate some two-bedroom units, enable future conversion to condo units, and design the building to adhere more closely with base zoning standards. So basically what we did is option 1 is the proposal that you guys have already seen, and option 2 is the updated version based on your comments. So option 1 was the 44 unit building, just had studios and 1-bedroom units, 31 underground parking stalls and 10 surface parking stalls. Option 2 has an additional 6 units, so 50 units total, has 30 studios, 11 1-bedroom units, 3 1-bedroom plus den units, and then 6 2-bedroom units. Same amount of underground parking and surface parking stalls though. So basically, if you look at the building, the only thing that changed was on the western end of the building. We extended the residential units out to incorporate 2 2-bedroom units per floor for 3 floors, 6 2-bedroom units. So incorporated 2-bedroom units, we covered that. Enable conversion to future condo units. I would say the standards of our T-wall building standards are condo grade as is. Middleton Center, the existing Conservancy Bend building, the future Garden District buildings. We have high-end fixtures, finishes, large square footage in the units. We do higher ceilings, door insets, in-unit washer and dryers, all the amenities that a condo would have. So we kind of nail that on our standard units. Then the third piece of feedback we received from you guys is designing the building to adhere more closely with base zoning standards. There's a slide in the plan. I think it's the first floor plan. And it just shows our building compared to what the setbacks would be on an MRL and MRM building. Our building complies with the existing PDD setbacks that were already approved or close. I think, Mark, you had measured, we were like a couple feet off. If we change the setbacks to comply or adjust the building to comply with the MRL or MRM setbacks, we'd be losing at least 4 surface parking stalls and likely 3 or 4 garage parking stalls, which gets us into a range that I don't think is within the city's parking ordinance and a parking ratio that we're uncomfortable with as the developer, as the site's already pretty tight on parking.
Jake, why would the surface parking be impacted at all?
So the ramp to the underground parking is right where those red and blue lines are there. So since on the left side of the screen, that townhome building is already built, that ramp would have to move west to the left. And we'd probably get rid of my estimate 4 parking stalls.
Could the ramp, the ramp is essentially the same as what's on the other side of the site, right?
Correct.
Could the ramp stay where it's at? The building above the basement stay where it's at, the building above the basement be shifted so that it would comply with the MRM standard?
I gotcha. So we could, no, you make a good point. We could shift it to the left, right? Because there's a small covered patio area that's above the garage on the left side of the building. We'd still be, if we wanted to keep the same amount of units,
Right.
we'd be encroaching on the left side, but then on the Clark Street side, we could be within that setback.
Yeah, I'm going to cut to the chase because it's late. I just think that you started off with the 44 unit footprint, which I personally felt was too much for the site. But after looking at your drawing, I thought, oh, well, the 44 unit, we shift it to the west slightly. We get it out of get the superstructure out of the setbacks. It probably works pretty decently. If we wanted to include some 2-bedroom units, and that, I think that would be a good thing. But I don't know, I'm not sure why we're enlarging that footprint. I mean, it's already feels like we're considerably past what, you know, the maximum ISRs are in the other districts.
Just to be clear, the parking garage is exactly the same.
Understood,
Okay.
understood. But that's one of the factors. The other factor is just the bulk of the buildings. You know, we've created quite a bit more bulk. So, you know, I would certainly be willing to try to, I'm past the townhomes at this point, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so, and I'm willing to try to work something out on this site. I'd like to see it get developed. I think we got to get something that's closer to, you know, like, can we get our, the building above the parking to meet reasonable setback standards? I'm assuming that that parking level is not too far above grade at that point. I don't know. Mark, do you know?
Well, Jake would know best. I
You know,
don't
what do
think
you
it's
mean?
exposed. The basement's not exposed much at all.
Is the basement exposed along Clark Street? So basically you'd have some patio area there or whatever. And you could do some landscaping or something on top of that patio area.
Give us do you want MRM or MRL? Because I mean, last time we can adjust the building to be fit, but just give it, you know, what would you guys approve? If we have constraints, we can design within them.
I would also ask, it looks like I don't know what direction is south here, but southwest on the sheet anyway. That 2-bedroom unit is looking right into the townhome. I don't know if there's windows on that side of the townhome. But either way, that window is going to be basically looking at either a blank wall or somebody else's window, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not comfortable with that.
I think the buildings has grown too far to the west in general.
Right. Agreed.
I think some expansion to the west would be okay. I think you've taken it too far with this proposal. I think the incorporation of the 2 bedrooms is good. And like I said, I'd like to see some housing done on the site, so let's figure out a way to get it done.
Yeah, I mean, you're an architect, Randy. Could we just take a slice out of the middle of, like a studio slice out of the middle, that's gonna eliminate 6 units.
Right.
But then that would shrink the building on both sides, you know,
Right.
bring it to the middle.
Right. You're gonna be very close to at that point, you're gonna be within the MRM standards. And I'd want you to push as far as you could to the east to meet the MRM standards, or slightly, you know.
So you could approve based on that, taking slice out of the middle, that we comply with that standard. And we'll move as far east as possible.
Yeah, basically, we're getting a 44 unit building with the 6 townhome, 6 2-bedroom units,
Correct.
right?
Would we need
We're taking a slice.
You said you want the MRM standard?
I think so, yes.
Can I just interject here?
Yeah.
Because,
Mark, go ahead.
Please.
is that okay?
Yeah.
Mhm. Yes.
So what's complicating about this and which standard to apply and how to apply them is that our setback dimensions are with respect to a street frontage. So in both cases, MRL and MRM, a setback from a street is 20 feet. That's when you consider the front. Well, obviously the front of the building isn't really designed to be facing Clark Street,
Yeah.
but that's what a common setback or what the standard setback would be. Is that the distance that you're referring to, Randy?
Well, on the screen, it's showing it as a 15-foot setback.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. That 15 feet seems reasonable.
Yeah, and we have, as you noted, the access to the underground parking. There's the symmetry with the building to the south. So I mean, to me, it doesn't really
make a big difference.
Right.
But the bulk, as you noted, so if you're comfortable with a 15-foot setback, all I'm trying to say is that that would not be MRL and MRM would both anticipate a 20-foot setback,
I see.
but this is zoned PUD. So you have that flexibility and I
was using the MRM and MRL as shown on their graphic.
I understand.
Yeah.
I understand. The other issue is the impervious surface ratio for MRL. It's 70%, for MRM it's 75.
We'll
You've
never
already
meet
noted
that. We'll
No, I
never meet
understand. I understand. So I just want to point out that if you're nudging them into one of these categories, you're still not going to exactly meet it, but I understand the point you're making.
Yeah. Then the only question I would have is, do you want the 2 bedrooms? I don't know if the 2 bedrooms occurred on the west end just because the building expanded that way and it made sense.
I was thinking the
But
same
does it
thing.
make sense to place them on the north side of the building facing the Conservancy or to the east side facing Clark Street? But it might be, there might be better locations for it.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments from commissioners?
I'll just
Mr.
simply
Sun?
state thank you for including the 2-bedroom units and also adding, I was going to mention that last meeting with the 1-bedroom plus den. That's an excellent flexibility too for families. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Any other thoughts, Commissioner Paulson?
Yes, Mark, what is the current setback off of Clark Street on the PUD?
Not very much. It's less than that. Less.
It's less than 15 feet. It's probably 10 feet, right?
The building we designed complies with the current setback, or at least we tried to design it to comply with the current setback. Although Mark, your calculations were like a few feet off than ours.
Well,
And I'm fine with Randy's suggestion that we comply with the MRM
Well, the MRM as shown on their drawing.
as shown on their drawing, the 15 feet.
Yeah.
My only other, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, there, and with the understanding that there's gonna be paved patio that's gonna extend another 8 feet, something like that as well. And I would hope with the SIP, we get some landscaping or some way of softening that
Yeah.
pavement.
My only other question is on circulation. Would most people access off of Clark Street? Or would some be able to access the surface parking off of Parmenter?
Either. I don't know what.
existing access wouldn't change.
Yeah, it'd be the same.
Okay,
There's access currently off of both streets. And actually what would change is there was originally going to be a driveway on the northern end of the site towards the northeastern corner. And that will no longer be there because of, yeah, and there you see.
right.
He has it up.
So that northern driveway will go away off of Parmenter.
And the setbacks for those townhome lots that were on the east side there facing Clark Street, originally they were anticipated to be,
Zero lot line.
well,
5 feet, I think.
8 feet from the property line.
8 feet. Yeah.
Clark Street is what I had. But the wall of the garage entrance was going to basically be a 0 lot line, as you just said. So the wall itself creates kind of it's like what, a 3-foot high wall. It's like a fence.
And then I think staff made a recommendation that a pedestrian access bridge be built over the entrance to the parking garage.
Yeah, that came from our engineering staff and I like the idea as well. The concern was that otherwise you're guiding pedestrians through the parking lot.
Pedestrian access, and I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so part of the challenge I had with reviewing this is I didn't know which option what option you were going to go with. So I'm not sure if this is ready for action tonight.
Well, it sounds
So-
like a modified option 2
Right.
is what we're leaning towards, with complying with the MRM standard, moving the building to the east and possibly moving the 2-bedroom units.
Yes, well,
Yeah.
Mark, I want to make sure that we meet the ordinance requirements in terms of action within a certain period of time.
Yeah.
Without but I think this needs to be cooked just a little bit more.
Mhm.
And I think the developer understands where we're coming from and sounds like they're acceptable to that.
Well, and then the other issue is what the original hearing notice said and whether there's a need to renotice the hearing. And right now I'm drawing I should have put the hearing notice in the packet. Actually, no, I know where it is. I can get to
We're
it.
gonna have a 44-unit building and it's what I
Right.
think we're acting on is a 44-unit, which was originally
Okay, yeah,
proposed.
okay, that's the number. You're right.
Yeah.
Okay, so do we need a motion tonight to ask the developer to incorporate the changes we've discussed? Or do we just want to ask them to do that and come back at the next, how long would it take to get a revision?
Month.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
And maybe they could grant an extension to the
yeah.
process for our ordinance purpose.
Otherwise, we draft a GIP approval now, a GIP amendment approval now.
It'll come back for SIP with all those changes anyway, so that's what we'd prefer, but.
And in the meantime, Mark, you'll research whether another hearing would be necessary?
I don't, right now, I don't think that's necessary if you're not increasing the number of units. I'm sorry, I don't
Okay.
have the hearing notice in front of me.
Commissioner Paulson, do you have a feeling one way or another as to how we should proceed?
I think we should recommend a GIP approval to council for a 44-unit building with the modified option 2 that would conform on the, I think it's the east side with the 15-foot setback, or as shown on the diagram.
Is that your motion?
Well,
I was going to let Commissioner Bruce make that motion, but
You did a really good job.
Can we
Commissioner
play back the
Paulson.
videotape and hear what he said again?
sure, that'll be my motion then.
so
To
this-
recommend approval of
A GIP?
GIP amendment to council for a 44-unit building with, what do we say, 6 2-bedroom units, shifting the building to the east and conforming with the 15-foot setback on the east side, and you're gonna have to help me out on the north side, Mark.
I don't think you're shifting the building to the east because you're pulling it back
Oh,
from
we're pulling it back from the west side, yeah.
the,
Setback on the east.
a 15-foot setback on the east side,
On Clark Street,
but that's not for the underground parking part. That's for the above ground.
Above ground.
Yeah.
for the above ground units.
Who's able to show us a motion?
Um,
Mark's trying.
how do I have to do that then?
And
Well, we'll type it up first and figure out the technology later. So do we need to incorporate moving the, or it's putting in the walkway, the pedestrian walkway?
Yes,
Yes?
but there must be some other contingencies as well.
Is this something we could take up at the next meeting? I mean, at this point, is there any reason this can't be taken up at the next meeting?
I would ask
You tell me.
I mean, I think, I really didn't know where you're going with
Yeah.
this, so I didn't,
You're not.
you know, I have a list of contingencies of approval that at a minimum should be considered, but now you're changing the building layout.
And we would need to
And
prepare the
findings of
Findings
fact,
of
yeah,
fact.
so I would prefer, I think you're giving us some guidance on the concepts, and that's, how about this?
could we
I,
make the motion that we support the concept of the use change from the townhouses to the 44-unit multifamily building? Just to make that clear on the record. And then to
schedule this for.
schedule this for next meeting with a developer submits a revised architectural plan accommodating the changes That's a little squishy, I'm sorry.
They
Well,
would
and it's very-
support the concept of the use of the change in land use and to request a revised design indicating a 44-unit building that should include at least 6 two-bedroom units and a 15-foot setback for the above-ground units from the east elevation or from the east lot line.
With the pedestrian walkway.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you
moving-
know that's going to be this, I mean, I don't know how much detail you need to get into right now, but
I would put it in.
Okay.
Relocating the 2 bedrooms.
well, I mean, you're not going to ultimately approve it without those changes. So, I mean, but if you want that in, that's fine. 15-foot setback from above ground units from the east lot line and accommodation of, and pedestrian and direct accommodation to Clark Street.
Yeah. I don't think we have to specify removing the 2-bedroom units from the west side. Let the architect design it, and if it appears to be a problem, then we'll have to find a way to provide screening.
Okay, so we're getting close to a motion. Looking at the screen here, Mark, I had a question about bullet number 5. Does this apply to an apartment situation?
I had just taken, like, we keep kind of a template of previous approval, and I just had copied that over.
Okay,
I
I
don't
would-
remember where the idea came from. Maybe it was in the original GIP. I don't know.
I would take it out then, because I don't see how it would apply.
Yeah, no, I understand.
And then you'll produce findings of fact for next time. Or for when we get, I'm unclear on what's going to happen next time.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Do we need to see the revised plan to approve the GDP amendment?
Yeah, we will have.
I think
But
you're
can we
giving
get that in
guidance.
2
I'm sorry.
weeks?
Yeah, they said more like a month. I mean,
Okay. So if we schedule this for 2 weeks, there's no way you're going to have a revised plan for us. Okay.
That'd be really, like, they would get it to us the day before if they were able to do that.
Okay. Is that, would you prefer that we wait until our first meeting in August?
Yeah, I think so, because I'm out.
You can start tomorrow. and finish
Okay.
today.
Okay, so Mark, let's hear, what did you type up for a motion?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm not connected to our.
No,
internet
you
right
can
now.
just read it.
To support the concept of the land use change and request a revised design to include 6 two-bedroom units, a 15-foot setback for the above-ground units from the east lot line, and a direct pedestrian connection to Clark Street.
I just have a quick question. When do you plan to break ground on the building? Would it be, are you still trying to do something this year or would it be next spring?
I think we typically like to open the buildings in the springtime. So just because this is a 44-unit building, we probably could break ground as late as next spring, but would like to do so earlier.
Okay, Mark, have you been able to figure out how to send your motion to?
Oh, I thought you just asked me to read it. I didn't know you.
Right.
I'm
I wanted to hear if there's anything missing. And I'm wondering, does the walkway, the pedestrian walkway to Clark Street, does that capture the recommendation that it be a bridge over?
Well, don't. Yeah.
Since you're an architect, could we make that, it's kind of like a long balcony, you know, it's attached to the building like a long balcony.
I think it's meant for pedestrian access. So I don't think it could be somebody's
No, it's
patio,
not.
but it can be
Yeah.
about, yes, it could be it
It's
can be
effectively, yeah.
You're gonna.
You could
set-
walk along there and it
you could
wouldn't be
walk
a
along.
balcony. It wouldn't have doors
Right,
for units,
right.
but you
But
could,
it's a concrete.
yeah,
you know,
attach
some-
the building.
Right, attached to the building.
Okay.
Additional spancrete or whatever it is.
I had it already. I just need to do some connecting.
So Randy, how would you describe that in a motion?
It was in the staff recommendations, actually. It was already written as a bridge across that underground parking entrance.
I mean, there's other things in here too that we would capture. I think we have guidance for the design, sufficient guidance for the
Yeah.
design.
All right.
And I guess the only other thing you could do is Mark say, and staff recommendations to date, whatever those are.
Right. I mean, you're just asking them to prepare a design right now and we'll capture all that at the, like you said, the detail.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
All right. So Mark, can you read your motion one more time? You don't have to share it.
oh, right now
Everyone-
I'm connected.
Oh, you are? Okay,
Uh,
then
well,
share
But
it.
I haven't sent it yet because I thought you were having me type more. So to support the concept of the land use change and request a revised design to include 6 two-bedroom units, 15-foot setback for the above ground units from the east lot line and direct pedestrian connection to Clark Street. So a 15-foot setback for the building that's above ground level. That's what it says.
Okay, so with regard to the GDP amendment for Conservancy Bend residences at 2431 through 2439 Parmenter and 2420 through 2446 Clark Street, the Plan Commission, or one of you, Aaron, maybe will move to do what Mark says. Read it again.
I'm sending it to Daphne so you can see it.
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
So
you haven't even heard the motion, Kurt.
I'll second it.
I've heard it 3 times now.
As we wait, okay, so we've got
There'll be minor,
Paulson and Bruce.
and trust us from the record of the recording to get this. So
Is it coming, Daphne?
Mhm.
And in the meantime, okay, here it is.
15-foot setback can be wordsmithed.
Okay, so that's the motion.
The only other thing I'd want to add to that is that the 44 unit building would be roughly the length of the option 2 50 unit building less the width of the studio apartments. He gave us a general description how much shorter the building would get. And here we don't get that.
Okay, say that again, Randy, please.
That the length of the 44 unit building would be roughly the length of the 50 unit building in the option 2 plan, less the width of a studio apartment. That was what developer was proposing. Seemed reasonable.
Okay. Now I don't know who to send it to. I guess I'll send it to Daphne.
Well, she's typing it.
Oh, she's typing it too?
Yeah.
I didn't need to type it. And I think this is important because we don't specify 44 unit building in this, support the concept of the land use change.
Yeah. And I think we need to say that it's for a 44 unit building.
Yeah. Okay, so we have an amendment proposed by Commissioner Bruce to add after land use change, support the concept of the land use change to a 44 unit apartment building.
Just say multifamily building. Yeah.
Okay. And to add at the end that the length of the building would be less than the width of. Would be roughly the length of the 50 unit building in the option 2 plan, less the width of a studio apartment. That's how I have it.
I had it as 2 studio apartments.
It's the width of one.
The length of the building is going to get reduced by the width of
Yeah.
the studio.
So support the concept of the land use.
1, yeah.
Unit multifamily building, I would say with the length of the building, roughly the width of, no, yeah. Type what I'm going to read because I typed it down. With the length of the building, roughly the length of the 50 unit building in the option 2 plan, less the width of a studio apartment. In the option 2 plan.
right where you're at, Daphne, in the
Yeah.
option.
less the width of one studio apartment.
Yeah.
Let's see, support, and we request a revised design to include those things. So that is, I'm going to make that as the substitute motion, if for in the interest of time. That's my substitute motion, and I'm making it. Who would like to second it?
I'll second it.
Who was the
Okay.
second? Randy?
Randy beat Aaron to it. Oh, now it's gone. Okay, but we have a motion. And we have a second. And I don't think we need to see it again. So we'll go for it. All those in favor of the motion that was on the screen, substitute motion, signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, so that passes unanimously. We don't need to consider the other one. And this will be back on our agenda in August with a revised plan and findings of fact, correct? From the staff?
Yes.
Okay, members.
And I will ask them to give us an email that just says that you are okay with that.
Okay. And we are postponing the discussion of the zoning ordinance until next time. So we've reached the end of our agenda. Thank you all very much for hanging in there. I hope Lambo's able to get picked up and carried home.
We should have just designed it. Could have sketched it up for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.